Brunskov, and I'm your moderator and host here for today, together with Catherine. Thank you very much for the support. And I'll show with you the agenda for today before we dive in. We have
just started the recording.
Thank you very much. So we have 3 hours ahead of us, focusing on IoT and edge computing in general, but now this is a thematic workshop. So we look at the communities, sorry for the typo, and so that's the horizontal view on, you could say, life, economy, nature, the situation, where the population is less dense. But then at the same time, we look at the sectoral view, agri-food in general, and more specifically in smart farming. So thanks for joining us in this conversation. Just a few housekeeping rules from my side. First of all, it's a pleasure to be hosting this from the NGIoT side. NGIoT being the CSA, the Support Action project, which is overseeing the IoT roadmap development based on the input from the stakeholders and communities, but together with AEF, from which we will hear later from Norbert, living in .eu, so the scaling digital communities initiatives from some networks and European Commission, from OASC, the network of cities, the Alliance for IoT Innovation, the EU-Iot CSA, which is the sister project to NGIoT. So when we hand over the baton on the roadmap, EU-Iot takes over. And our third sister in the family, OpenDI, which is a coordination action linking the different initiatives around digitizing European industry with a focus on IoT and related aspects such as the economy, together with the European Commission. So thank you and very warm welcome. The session is being recorded, as you heard, so if this is not convenient for you, I'm afraid you would have to leave. It will be shared afterwards, and that includes also the presentations, slides, and so on, of course. Please mute yourself, audio and video, when you're not speaking and when you're not presenting, but otherwise, please do take part in the dialogue. So especially in the chat, it's very free form. We will pick up on the conversation there if there are any questions or clarifications needed. And also you can raise your hand either in the Zoom or just write it there and we will get back to you. It's a very important point that this is a quite symmetrical workshop. Of course, we will have some policy and some positions in the beginning, but there's a nice moment towards the end where everybody can get their voice. And in fact, some have already submitted statements to the event website there. So thank you for doing that. If there's any technical issues, do let us know in the chat or on the email, so we can act on it. So we have here, why don't I have here? I have the right agenda. So a very short welcome, but setting the policy context from the Commission side. Then we dive into the existing strategic agendas and positions, because of course we are not starting from scratch here. So in fact, as many of you will know, this is part of a series of workshops looking at IoT and edge computing. And in the previous 6 months, since September, we've looked more horizontally from the technology side. So what are the priorities that are emerging? What have we learned from the conversation with the stakeholders? And going closer and closer to consolidating those existing priorities. And we did the consolidation wrap up, you can say, 25th of February this year. Now we will then have 6 thematic workshops, and this is the second. We had in the morning, we had on smart cities and communities, so the more densely populated areas, or in fact, you could say any area, but with a technology focus, also digital twins and so. And now we move to the less populated perspective, or the rural areas, including the prominent sector of agri-food and particularly smart farming. There will be follow-up sessions with 4 more thematic workshops on manufacturing, mobility, automotive, as well as energy and health and care. So please do sign up. I'm sure the links can be shared in the chat, and you can already make your registration there. So that is the context, and I'd like to just say that as I mentioned before, oops, still the wrong one. We do have this session towards the end, which is labeled visions and statements. So please, I mean, prepare mentally, or maybe even if you have one slide you want to share, I think this is possible. But we will prioritize, if time is short, we'll prioritize those who have indicated before. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to give the floor to Joël Baquet and Doris Macquart from DG Connect and DG Agri. So Joël, I will now unshare my screen and give the floor to you. Thank you for joining and for supporting this and for sharing a status and your vision with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Could you hear me? Yeah.
We hear you well. Yes.
Okay. You can see me as well, I guess.
We can see you. Yes. Not yet slides, but yep.
Okay. I have no slides.
Fantastic.
First of all, thank you very much for this invitation to this workshop. As an opening for this session, I will deviate slightly from what you can expect from myself. I will not provide you the policy context. I think Doris, my colleagues from DG Agri, will give you more the policy context. I would like to raise a number of questions, in fact, which are really specific to the deployment of edge computing in this sector. I start with some, well, the first question I have in mind is what is really specific for this sector? Agricultural sector, what is specific is the geographical conditions are essential parameters. The typical usual example we mention is, if you are growing potatoes in north of Europe, it might be quite different from growing it in south of Europe. So you see the importance of the geographical position, in fact. So it means, what does that mean? It means interventions from the farmers have to be based on thorough analysis of the local data coming from sensor in the field or from the farms and so on. With the current deployment of digital technology and the IoT in particular, a lot of data are collected from the farms, from the tractors, and from the field, sensor in the field, and so on. Here I have a first question. Do you really think that all this data are useful? Now, the next one would be, does it make sense to send all this data on the cloud of the suppliers? And a third question is, we know that all those data which are collecting so far are not fully exploited. Now let's come to a more specific focus of this workshop, edge computing. How can edge computing really help the situation? Well, edge computing is computing close to the data sources outside the data centers. The deployment of edge computing in rural areas can offer, what can it offer? Well, it can offer local data from let's take the farms, from the neighboring farms to be analyzed in a local and regional context. Data could be filtered, it could be qualified, it could be analyzed very close to the customer. Customer are the farmers. Now, this is quite, let's say, theoretical. In practice, how can this really work? So here is my next question. Where to locate these edge computing facilities, in fact? On what we call the premises edge, which means, in fact, at the farm level? Well, having this at the farm is absolutely not realistic. Not realistic for a couple of reasons. The first one is, I guess the farms cannot afford to purchase this equipment. This is the first one. And then there are not also techies, in fact, to maintain this equipment and so on. So I would go for a situation, this is just proposal to be, to be discussed. going for what we call a near edge. Near edge means, in fact, you need to rely on some kind of, let's call it a local trusted intermediaries. What could be the local trusted intermediaries? It could be simply the cooperatives. It could be association of farmers. It could be regional associations. You see, this is what I mean by the trusted intermediaries. The farm data are aggregated at this level, the level of the intermediaries. Now, what could be the added value of this? Well, normally the farms, they trust their intermediaries. Thinking about the cooperative, thinking about association, they trust them. So they will provide the data. That's no problem. Even if we can anonymize the data, this might be a perfect way, to move the data from the farms to these intermediaries. What the farms would get in return? Well, we are always thinking about, money-wise, they should be paid and so on. What about thinking about a return, which is not like that, which could be, instead of getting some money in return, to receive some advices on sustainability. And the first one for the farmers, the first one, which is extremely important, is the economic sustainability. But think about the Green Deal, all this stuff about the environmental sustainability. If the farmers are able to receive such advice from these trusted parties, in fact, based on the data which have been aggregated by the intermediaries, in fact, this would be really great for them. They could also provide the intermediaries something important in farming, which is the benchmarking of farms at local level. It's always important to get, if I am, a farmer, I would like to know the performance of my neighborhood farms, in fact, just to see how far I am, if I need to improve, if I need, to change things. So innovation services could also be provided also in return and be negotiated by the intermediaries. So this will not be only, these ideas could not focus only on, let's say, contact with the farmers, but it could be extending along the food value chain. Instead of requesting the farmers to disclose their data set, a local aggregation at the edge level would safeguard their knowledge of the farmers, and would allow a minimum transparency in the food chain. So this is all my introduction I want to make. Let's say it's just a kind of a fruit of our thought. There, I think I would stop. I wish you a successful workshop. Thank you very much, and enjoy this workshop. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joel. Of course, it's always more challenging when you come with the questions instead of giving, if not the answers, then the size of the boxes that we need to enter. But thank you very much. These are indeed good questions, and I think knowing the presenters today, we will indeed come by them, including, why all this data? Are we using the relevant bits and pieces? And also, are there different ways we could approach this? Could we even learn more broadly in society for how rural communities and cooperatives have traditionally organized value creation in balance with nature and community? So I think this is really good questions. Thanks for bringing them to the table. Doris, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the invitation. I think I would like to start with a personal statement. It's really nice to see that such a proactive innovation ecosystem, and in this case, it's not only about interdisciplinarity, but also a cross-topical one. And most of you know my position. I'm fostering on digitalization in rural areas and in the agriculture sector. And so far, it's for me a very pleasure to see that both topics are linked, because I think there's still the opportunity to harvest some spillover effects and use the synergies between the two fields, agriculture technologies and the digitalization of rural communities. Like Joel, I decided not to make a standard presentation. Most of you have heard about policy introductions at the beginning, and I think I would like to use the opportunity to make the workshop effective and more reflect how this workshop could help in the work of DG Agri and taking decisions and future programming. So I hope it's time for you. If you wish a policy update, I'm ready to do it as well. But let me reflect on that. As a policy DG, DG Agri sees the situation of the sector and rural areas, sets out a strategic approach and policy objectives within the process, like currently for the long-term vision for rural areas, and before, for instance, for the farm to fork strategy. So foresight analysis play an important role, but also the development in neighboring policy fields, like here, for instance, data and digital policies. And a key question for a policy DG is how to best achieve the policy objectives and how can that be demonstrated? So that is a key question we take as a starting point. And without going into detail, for you, it's self-evident at the moment, agriculture and rural policy have, briefly summing up, a strong focus on sustainability and development and the competitiveness of both the sector and also of rural areas. And for sure, the twin digital and green transition also forms a key element. So that's briefly summed up, very briefly summed up the policy context. And if you now look, it's already acknowledged digitalization and research and innovation play a key role as an enabler to achieve the policy objectives. If we take that as a starting point for this workshop, then it comes to the identification of the best tool from a sectoral policy DG, which has at the beginning a technology neutrality point of view. And that makes also a task, an additional task for this workshop, because you have to convince a policy DG what is the added value and how to implement it of a certain technology or approach you see as added value for, in this case, agriculture, the policy objectives, and rural communities. And how can it be made happen? So, meaning in other words, with which tools and means can policy objectives be achieved in the best way under consideration of effectiveness and efficiency? So that is one key question I would give you at hand for this workshop. So, and one additional statement, best solutions can vary from region to region. And whether, for instance, edge or cloud solutions may form at the current situation, the best choice may depend on the framing conditions. So it's a quite complex question we have to handle. And an additional element, it's not only about technology innovation, but also social innovation, and ideally both goes hand in hand. The effective implementation of digital solutions requires a strategic approach, more than the development of innovative digital tools. You know that better than me, and we need also digital and data infrastructure to make things work. So important elements are also data and data interoperability. And finally, I think that is from a policy DG also important to be mentioned. We need trust and the readiness to adopt. And here it's to be considered. We have, and that is why I acknowledge at the beginning the interdisciplinarity. If we have the technologies, an external, for instance, driven data ecosystem or the best technology solution proposed can be genius, but will not lead to success when only driven by some players, for instance, even if they are not so good, so innovative, but they have to have the acceptance of the whole, let's say, in this case, community or the whole sector to lead to success. And here we have to consider the situation, but also the cultures and mentalities across the European Union. And they are quite diverse, so it's quite a challenge to get a common denominator. And yes, as regards to linking to the policies, you know that the one programming cycle is nearly concluded, and with the publication of the first programs expected, both in Horizon Europe and for the Digital Europe program, and will hopefully be published soon. And I think if we look at both DGs, we tried our best to achieve best supplementarity between the programs. And having said that, it may sound that one programming cycle has just been concluded, but we already plan for the next one. And insofar, I think the workshop is very relevant. And beyond that, it's not only about the support like investment programs or here's the research and innovation programs which are relevant to drive the digital transformation in agriculture and rural areas. So we need more than that. And also the strategic initiatives, be it legislation or only strategic decisions in the field, for instance, on data, need to be informed. And insofar, I really look forward to the following discussion, and I wish you all a very interesting and constructive workshop. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Doris, for those words, including the personal comment. Glad that you appreciate this attempt, at least to juxtapose not just the interdisciplinary contributions, but also the horizontal and the sectorial. We heard earlier this morning the colleagues from DG Digit discussing or presenting the Interoperability Framework for Europe, EIF, and its inception as smart cities and communities, where it really takes this multiple T-shaped approach. And I think we're moving towards better understanding how the many perspectives can be linked together. So for instance, as you mentioned, it's not just about technical interoperability or semantic interoperability, it's also organizational, it's legal, and it's cultural. So all of these 5 elements are actually being proposed now in the EIF for SCC, which is in consultation now. So thank you, Joël and Doris, also for your very dialogical approach here. I think that is much appreciated also by the colleagues here around the table. All right, but so let's dive into perhaps a little bit more rigorous starting point from the colleagues here in NGIoT. Because like said in the beginning, this is part of a string of workshops. So I give the floor now to Adrienne and the colleagues, in this case, Francisco, to update us so that when we go into the further discussion, we have a little bit of common background here on what has happened so far. Thank you, Adrienne, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Martin. I'll try to share my screen here. I have problems.
Do you want to share it, Francisco, or should I do it? I can do it as well. If
yeah, perhaps you can try to do it because.
Would you do it, Francisco? Then it's still on your side.
I think it's best if you do it because my connection.
Okay, I will do it. Today, so Adrienne, please go ahead while I dig out the slides and share them. Thank you.
Yeah, you received the latest one. I just sent it to you, Martin. Sorry for this. So what we will present, and Martin is hopefully be able to share the screen here, is the work we have been doing on the NGIoT white paper. So the white paper is based on a series of webinars Martin already told you about. We have had on IoT and edge computing. We plan to publish the white paper in around 2 weeks' time. So your input today is really, really welcome and can still be integrated into the white paper. And then, of course, also afterwards, we will develop the white paper into the IoT roadmap for research, innovation and deployment in Europe. And the roadmap work will be ongoing here in spring and during summertime. and we will publish the roadmap in October, so in autumn, in the upcoming autumn. Thank you, Martin, for showing it here. So here you can see the timeline. Next slide, please. Some of our key takeaways from the webinars, but also from many interviews we have been conducting with key stakeholders, and of course an analysis of the key documents and papers, can be summarized in this picture. So there should be no doubt that IoT and edge computing is supporting EU's competitiveness, and there are many different EU companies operating at the edge, so many stakeholders at the edge. There is also technology impact. The conversion between IoT and edge computing brings radical change to existing technology paradigms, and there we, for example, think about that IoT itself transforms from more monitoring technology to intelligence, to becoming more dynamic. Another takeaway which we think is extremely important is, of course, the focus on sustainability, and especially connecting the digital transformation to the green transformation. IoT and edge computing, so the move to the edge is also empowering and supporting the pathway towards more inclusive societies, and that has to do with the move from a more central orientation to a local enabler. And then we move from a value chain to a value network. So also the quality of the relationships within the ecosystem is important. And then we move over to you, Francisco.
Yeah, thanks, Adrienne, and Martin for sharing. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Also in the white paper, we can see reflect some of the market dimensions, right? It's important to have a little bit of an understanding or a scope of the scope of edge and how it relates to IoT. So several studies point out that yeah, I mean the edge computing trend is growing, and we particularly wanted to show this with a study from the Linux Foundation, which where you, as you can see, the growth is over 30%, right? They the power footprint, the capex to come to these numbers. And then it's important also to note that proxy in these two variables, we can see how Europe is second to the APAC region, which is very encouraging. And also that, and it's very important to point out that multinational network operators in the region of Western Europe are the ones leading the charge and the largest customers, right? So maybe go to the next slide, please. Now, based on different consultations with the community and also a little bit of desktop research, NGIoT and the white paper, we come up with this sort of chart where we reflect mainly the European players in this particular sector. It's important to note that there are European players in the whole value chain. However, there's also competitors coming from other regions entering the market strongly. But yeah, one of the main takeaways from here is that Europe has strong players when it comes to hardware and service providers. And of course, part of the efforts in this workshop is to take a look into this first, let's say, landscaping effort and contribute with us, right? Part of the idea of today is to point out, hey, there's this other front runner that might be good to include or to take into account. so that we can better work towards the efforts that are being done within the IoT. So maybe we next move to the next. Lastly, for this specific sector, also some of the most important key organizations are listed here. This is specifically for the vertical of rural communities in Agri-Food. So also take a look into it, and yeah, we would welcome any input. Yeah, I give the floor to Adrienne, follow up with the trends and barriers for the edge computing and the specific vertical.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Martin. And the next, yes, we're looking a little bit into the trends. So of course, we can see a move from cloud to edge. Currently, we see that around 20% of the data is operated, is processed at the edge, and we will see this going to be changed in the next 3 to 5 years. We also currently see a move from monitoring to intelligence, and that is of course also enabled by the conversion between artificial intelligence and IoT. We already talked about the move from central to decentralized, and Joël also mentioned that the importance of being able to process and analyze data locally and to adjust to local conditions, especially also within agriculture, where geography, weather conditions are extremely important. The move to the green transformation, I already mentioned that, and perhaps also important to mention is a move which we currently see from big data to relevant data. So it's only the relevant data which is identified and analyzed and processed. And then of course, as we already said, the move from value chain to value network. Next slide, please. So currently, we are running these webinars on the various verticals. One can put questions mark whether smart cities and communities is a vertical. It's definitely not. It's there where the complexity come together, but it's part of our webinar series. But there are several barriers and challenges that are relevant for all the different domains we have listed here, and which we will be addressing in our webinars here. The digital skills, so the lack of specialized staff, the interoperability, issues of trust, of security, privacy, standardization, and there is fragmentation still very much in the field. So more specific for the agri-food and rural communities, and I think many of us here can recognize that, is of course the connectivity issues, especially in rural areas. It's also a kind of a mindset. We still need to increase the trust in technology, because there can also be reluctancy in the data sharing. The high costs are already mentioned, the lack of infrastructure, and of course issues with interoperability. Next slide, please. And there we move to Francisco.
Yeah, thanks. So following a bit with the strategy for Europe and then multi-annual framework, we can see how the EC is moving towards digital transformation. So which means moving from digitalizing things to doing new things with this digitalization. Now, in the context of IoT and edge computing, there is this plays a key role in several sectors. So these two concepts are, we can see, mentioned in as primary actors in the EU data strategy and also in the industrial strategy. Now, also important to know that COVID-19, of course, has made this much more important, much relevant today. And well, as part of these strategies, at the end of 2020, there was a draft called the Data Governance Act, which is a cornerstone for this development, right? The aim is mostly to bring trust in data sharing also to have European rules on neutrality, to make the intermediaries to more trustworthy, and to foster data altruism, which is kind of setting the rules for citizens and businesses to voluntarily share the data, which is a very innovative approach, and which is missing a little bit in today's framework. So maybe we go to the next slide. Now, the identified key and enabling research areas you can see here. So to mention 5G, cloud architectures, trust and security, advanced electronics, and artificial intelligence. Those are not technologies themselves, but rather a system of systems to approach to combine the different technologies, demanding not only a multidisciplinary approach, but also part of the enablers of that need to be, or that would foster a better development and application of IoT and edge computing in the different verticals, and of course on the cross-cutting domains. Now, these are the specific in this specific areas. We can see how there are key enablers, as we can see here, that in terms of low-cost, high-volume connectivity for 5G. And well, they're listed in the slide, so maybe for the sake of time, we can move to the key recommendations. So in the case of NGIoT, and as a matter of conclusion, these recommendations for the IoT and edge computing development, and to foster this development, but to go beyond the meta operating systems. So with this, we mean that the real challenge today for the cloud edge continuum is in the development of scalable and distributed management of resources and services. So this the optimization of this specific part would allow the cloud edge computing to finally explode. Also to increase the emphasis on AI and hardware convergence, since the role of microprocessors is essential, microprocessors, but also on energy efficiency, processing architectures. Now, and the short term, we post that, or machine learning tasks. Also in the short, medium term, focus on novel approaches to reduce computational requirements of computing. That would be key to allow the efficiency needed for scalability. And finally, in the longer term, should look into disruptive approaches that will handle the barriers, or the upcoming barriers in today's architectures. Following, to highlight the relevance of IoT in supporting the sustainability goals. Of course, in the longer term, should focus on easier or materials that are easier to recycle, or that are more longer lasting, so that we can have more environmentally compatible devices. Next is to support large deployment of standard and replicable solutions. So this would also help with interoperability. And even if IoT deployments are most of them still at the level of proof of concepts, the next step we should take is to foster these large-scale deployments, and that would be certainly facilitated by the standard and replicable solutions. So also in here, as a key recommendation, is to increase harmonization of the IoT cloud edge standards. This goes in the same line of the previous recommendation, right? And more on the side of adoption. This harmonization would also foster the side of adoption. And last but not least is the invest on experimental infrastructures to support the testing and experimentation of these cloud edge solutions. So it is important to build this capacity, and this recommendation is very important in the short term, but also to maintain it in the longer one, to ensure that European innovators can also be sustained in the longer term, and yeah, build, test, and scale their products, but also to project to other regions afterwards. So that would be it for the recommendations. Thank you for your attention, and we hope these insights would help to foster the discussion that follows. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Francisco. Any comments from your side, Adrienne, or this concludes the presentation?
I just want to repeat that your input is still very welcome. So that is also the reason why we put our email addresses at the last slide. So if you have anything, any feedback, any input, don't hesitate to take contact to us. Thanks.
Thanks a lot for this. Okay, so now we have, you know, what we know until now, and you can see these are kind of general recommendations. Okay, this is the state of the art. We need to do these things right. So we have these thematic workshops, and now in the context here, we look at both the rural communities and the agri-food and smart farming. Now I'd like to first invite to the floor Mariana Faraldi from who is the Open DEI, so digitizing European industry, the CSA. They're looking at a lot of projects, but specifically from your own view, what do you see, and what are the you know, immediate, you know, short to medium actions that spring to mind? So thanks, Mariana, for joining us here, and please do take the floor. I stopped sharing the screen so that you can share yours, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, Martin, and thank you so much for the invitation. So I will try to be very brief. So my name is Mariana Faraldi. I'm a senior researcher, a project manager with 20 years of experience. I'm here today to share an experience matured by my company, which is Tecnoalimenti. Tecnoalimenti is a research organization constituted under the form of no-profit consortium of food industries. We are located in Italy, and we act as a sort of think tank. So we collect information from outside, from different sources. So first of all, from own shareholders. We have 31 Italian food industries, very well known and representative of our national food sector. From own industries, I mean own industrial network, far from own shareholders, from our experience as a research organization on finance projects, and our participation in different platforms, for example, regional, national clusters, but also a collaboration with Agri-Food. And very important, through our role of Agri-Food ambassador in the project Open DI, which is a coordination and support action financed under the program Horizon 2020. Our ecosystem of project in Agri-Food is mainly constituted by large-scale pilots, and members are those represented in the picture, and which will be speakers or involved into the round table along this very interesting workshop. So we, as you understood, we are a sort of collectors of needs, requirements, and information and trends from outside. And today I would like to share with you our vision, our point of view, and under the form of messages. So first of all, let's move the point of view. So don't stop to the agriculture phase, but let's move to the agri-food supply chain. Personally, I noticed, in particular in the finance project, that very often the term agri-food is not rightly used. So very often we refer to agri-food for speaking about agriculture, or we speak about agriculture referring to agri-food even if we stop at the primary production phase. So So let's take into consideration that the agri-food supply chain is very complex. It is done by different steps. We start from the farm, very, very important, because there we have the production of the food, of the agricultural food, but through different steps, we arrive until the shelf of the supermarket or on the table of the consumer. So today, when we refer to food-related context, the following terms are used. So smart agriculture, and we focus to primary production. Then we speak about a smart factory, and suddenly we move the point of view to the manufacturing as two separated and seems independently areas and domains. But it is not really true. In the food domain, in the food system, we need to enlarge our vision, and we have to speak about a smart food system. So agriculture as the very beginning of a complex reality. In particular, if we consider that 70% of the agricultural products are then transferred, manufactured by the food industry. So it's in this enlarged context that we have to consider in perspective IoT solutions. So IoT systems as a wide range of sensors, devices, vision systems connected to the internet that can monitor the entire food production process from the production farm to the point of sale. In this way, we can have a transparent supply chain, and a large amount of data can be generated, which can allow an exchange and a sharing of data and information for a better decision-making process. So if I have to spend just a few words on the trends in digital transformation at European level, according to our experience, we can see that at farm level, there is a growing awareness. So some investments have been done in the last years or are planned in the near future, but there is still a general delay in digital technologies application. The main interest in the investment done to date are the monitoring production costs and the increase of food production. The needs related to data acquisition, processing, and valorization are not a priority for farmers, for entrepreneurs. At food chain level, we have two different situations. Considering that most of the enterprises are SMEs, we should underline a general delay also in this sense. Digital is considered as an area independent from the business activity, delegated to external agencies, or else a do-it-yourself vision that induces to do everything by themselves in the absence of skills, with not very encouraging results and almost no use of data. If we speak about large enterprises, the point of view is a little bit different, because as you can imagine, these structures, these organizations have a medium long-term strategy for innovation, for technological investments. And in this case, we can see good and successful applications of IoT and digital transformation in general, and the need to invest further on it. As a general vision and overview, we have to consider that most of the solutions applied in any case are very punctual and related to a specific phase or function of the organization, and not related to different points of the organization itself, or even better, to the whole value chain. And this is a weakness. The current IoT applications along the supply chain, here I have just put a summary table with some overview. So in the primary production, foresee the keywords are monitoring sensors, and IoT is used for monitoring and control agricultural machines, crops, fields, very important, the precision irrigation. And so the trends are the installation of central water station, the monitoring of climate, temperature, hydration, and soil pH, but also the detection of contaminants related to the plant disease or the animals, and the cameras with different systems of vision. And very often all these systems are correlated with the smart decisions support system, and so with artificial intelligence algorithm support. In terms of transport and logistics, we have very used barcodes, RFID, and different solutions which are related to the items or to the vehicles, which can be both monitored for the quality and safety of the food product itself. In terms of food manufacturing, we can have a lot of opportunities, starting from the raw material and inventory control, and we can arrive until the packaging, until the warehouse control, and so on. So if I have to summarize some barriers, I think we are very much in line with the previous presentation. So according to our experience, the problem is not a technological problem because the technologies are there, but the problem is mainly related to the perception of risks from the end users. So there is a sort of perception of complexity, too much costs and so on. So this is one of the main bottleneck. And what is very important is the collaboration between the technology provider on one hand, who knows the technologies and the opportunities which can offer, and which is able in some way, in strict collaboration with the end user, to create, to customize the solution in the specific use case, in the specific context. Let's remember that alone the technology provider is not able to do anything if not strongly supported by the domain specific knowledge. And this is really something which we are living every day, working together with our industries and with the end users. So then some other barriers related to architecture, interoperability, need of interconnection of the different solutions. And for sure, what already said by Adrienne, the reluctancy in sharing data and in according access to the data, but mainly because they do not see the value related to this point. And with this slide, I will hand trends and perspective. The keywords are, according to our point of view, valorization of data. So moving from the big data, which can be generated along the entire food supply chain, to the smart data, to the relevant data. And another keywords already mentioned by Adrienne before, the strict integration between IoT and advanced artificial intelligence algorithms, so that we are really able not only to produce data, but also to interpret them, to valorize them, and to move from IoT through an evolution towards Internet of Value. For example, through the use of blockchain in traceability aspects and so on. So thank you so much. I hope that this presentation, which is related to a personal experience, which we are living in OpenDI, but also according to my company, was useful and very close to the end users. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mariana. No, indeed, very useful. And also we can see in the comments here from Doris, I mean, it's complex. So there's upstream and downstream. And I think actually, when I look at what's happening in more like urban context and municipal context, I think actually the rural agri side is much better organized, even on the technical side, to be honest. So if you need a working technical ecosystem, even in a city with sensors and so on, where do you have it? On the field and in the complex value network therearound. We will see some examples of this, I'm sure, as well. Okay, so thank you a lot, Mariana. I just put up this just so that we know where we are. So we are still on the strategic agendas and positions. So I would like Norbert Schlingmann to prepare for your intervention here. And then I would ask if it would be okay, Luis, I hope that we put Eric Schultes from FAIR before. There's some urgency there. So I hope we can do a slight reorganization and you come after, and then Marcos. I hope this is acceptable. But Norbert, please, from the AEF perspective, I don't know if you can see. Yes, here you are. I can see you as well. So I leave the screen to you, and I hope you can also introduce yourself. But actually, when I say that the agri sector is much better organized, I mean you. I mean what you have with the data models, what you have with the ISOBUS. I think it's really inspiring. Then, of course, it works in a particular context, but let's learn about that. I think that is the main point here. Thank you for joining, and please share your vision.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin. It's a pleasure to present here a few slides about AEF, only a brief overview of what we are doing. And when I listened carefully to Joel and Doris' questions, and probably I can answer some of these questions very brief, but let's see. So first of all, you see my presentation?
Yes, we see and hear you loud and clear.
Good, thank you very much. Then let's start. Good, what is AEF? Who are we? Agriculture Industry Electronic Foundations, founded 2008. 8 major agricultural equipment manufacturers and 3 trade organizations are our members, our core members. We have worldwide more than 230 member companies. Lots of them, majority of them are German, European, Italian, French, Denmark countries, out of these countries. We are supporting ISOBUS worldwide. That's a communication platform, communication protocol between tractors and implements. So last but not least, the information, the data out of the machines, that is a source what we generated for the food chain, for all the other companies, organizations who need data. So we are defining guidelines for the ag industry, as mentioned, concentrate on tractor implement management, data exchange between machines and clouds, and coordinate activities and developments. Only a typical ISOBUS system. This is how it looks like today. We have a tractor with an implement from different colors, so different manufacturers are behind. We have a CAN bus on board with a standardized connector, with a terminal on board. And the main question is how we transfer data. So the data interface is standardized as well. It's in regard to ISO XML. The data exchange is between can be shared between USB stick, very conventional, and between cloud systems. We are working on that. We have lots of proprietary solutions and connections over there, and few manufacturers using already cloud communication. So how is the machinery, how is the digital world, how looks like the digital world in agriculture? So first of all, working with systems of mixed fleets are always challenging, but more challenging is the communication in rural areas. I think, Doris, you mentioned it minutes ago, you concentrate on rural areas. And that is our challenge here, to coordinate data exchange in these areas with a sometimes bad connectivity. And that is a big challenge for all of us. So we need robust solutions for farming, and we need an interoperability concept that depend on communication. And that is, as I mentioned, the key success factor. Here only an overview about few use cases. We from AEF are working on it. So process data exchange, coverage map exchanging, then cooperative machines, well known as platooning, high volume data streaming with cameras, and road safety, very important. We are working on CITS solutions, and that is very, very challenging for us. And we see an opportunity to reduce accidents between cars and big tractors on the fleet. So standardized M2M communication in mixed fleets creates high value opportunities for customers worldwide by enhancing work efficiency, quality, and safety, as mentioned, even in rural areas. So How looks the farmer's complexity today? I think all of you have a picture in mind how this looks like today. But in the center is a farmer. Today, lots of farmers use smartphones, use tablets to exchange data. In modern farmers, high-equipped farmers have all these technologies. Some other farmers do not have all these complete technologies. What we are seeing here is that the farmer has to manage all this, not only the machines, tractors and implements, but all the other stuff to manage his farm, to deal with authorities, to deal with resources. The food chain is behind. What he has to do in addition, in Europe, he has not only machines from one manufacturer, he has to deal with multicolored machines from different manufacturers. In addition to that, lots of other systems are available outside our responsibility, AEF's responsibility. So he has to take care about weather forecast systems, satellites and drones, robotic platforms, IoT platforms, sensors, and as mentioned, authorities, the legislations and services would like to exchange data as well. So the data collection and the connectivity is very important. I mentioned it already. Most manufacturers have own software platforms or use joint platforms connecting vehicles. They have to manage all their machines, capable to use multi-branded fleets with standards for cloud communication. Data and reports need to be in the system directly after the work on the field is done. However that looks like, but this is very important. And an interface to connect different platforms is needed, and AEF is working on solutions to reduce interoperability issues. That is one of our main scope of our work. We started a few years ago. Wireless in-field communication based on CITS, that's a European initiative, and thankful to all the people from Car2Car and other consortium and other communities who work on this. This is a possibility for us without network availability to communicate between machines. High-speed isobus, that's what will come. The CAN bus system, our current connection between tractor and implement is not anymore sufficient enough. So we need faster systems. We based on Ethernet and other systems, platform to platform I mentioned. Then tractor implement management to reduce the complexity, the driver's complexity, so that the drivers, tractor drivers can concentrate on driving his machine instead of operating this working machine. And conformance testing at the end to guarantee compatibility. At the end, and that is for the ag industry very important, we have to fulfill safety, security, and liability requirements and regulations. That's we are working very close together with the SEMA, which is our political arm in Europe, to fulfill all the requirements. That's for the moment all from my side. Would be great to get your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Norbert, and it's really interesting what you put forward here. So of course I see many connections to the minimal interoperability mechanisms that you may or may not be aware of, and this is also what we have now in the roundtable later. I don't know if I can share the screen again, Norbert, if you allow. Yes. Thank you. So I think this is really where there's a lot of learnings to be brought out of the agri-food sector, if you will. But I think there's also an emerging contribution from, you could say, the other side. with the minimal interoperability, actually addressing some of the issues that you are finding and that you are addressing here now, when you really see how it works well within the sector and with the multi-branded, let's say, value networks up and running, then you still have a barrier. There's the technical, but then there's the semantic. And we know, of course, that the cross-sector or the cross-organization data quality, including all the liabilities, whether business, whether safety, and so on, personal data, even financial data, come into play. So there, it might be interesting really to follow this white paper that we're putting together with the minimal interoperability and the learnings from AIM and ISOBUS and so on. So much more on that, hopefully, in the coming weeks and months. Eric, I see you now here, and thank you for joining. I'll just put up your face here. It's in the next session, but apologies, Marcus, you're then also here. Eric, you represent FAIR, and I think talking about, you know, how to contextualize the technical development within a broader context has a lot to do with the governance. And we mentioned now the MIMS, the minimal interoperability, but then you are doing something similar, applying some principles to how we can actually make this work as data landscapes and data exchanges. So thank you very much for joining, and please share with us your thoughts. I stopped sharing the screen here.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Martin, and good day, everyone. Very happy to be here and to share with you some of our insights from the work I've been doing in the Go Fair initiative for the last 3 years. Just so you know, my own background is as a research biologist, evolutionary biology and some biochemistry. But over the years, my own interest became much more data intensive, and I've been doing work with the Go Fair Foundation full time now for the last 3 years. And indeed, you know, interoperability is a key issue here. But the nice thing about the FAIR principles, I think, is that it gives us this context in which to embed some of our challenges in interoperability. And it gives us a broader framework, I think, in order to think about implementation strategies. And just so you know, Go Fair as an organization was founded really as a fast track implementation organization for the FAIR principles. And we're very bottom up. We work with the community, and I'll show you some of the examples from this that I hope are relevant for the topics today. And I inserted this slide just at the last minute, so I won't spend much time on it. But there are 2 links here to some videos that are quite dated by now. They're pretty old, but they were at that time quite visionary, and maybe still so. They are based on what we call a distributed learning approach to managing very complex and heterogeneous data. In one case, for personal health data; in the other, for, we could say, farm data, or for farmers' data, personal farming data. And I won't say more other than just that these are visions that are based on the application of the FAIR principles. But you can get to the links at your convenience. And maybe what I can do is I can put a link to my slides into the chat right now for you. And then this is one way for you to kind of follow along with the links if you like. But what I would like to start with, or what I was asked actually by Martin to present, was kind of an overview of the FAIR principles and the approaches that have emerged here. So here's a snapshot of the FAIR principles. They're really like 15 one-liners. They're very computer science oriented. If you look at them, they're also a little bit more than that. They're more like data science oriented. But what you see is, you know, despite the egalitarian association we may have with, excuse me, with FAIR, these principles are, excuse me, these principles are nonetheless very, very much minded to a specific application, which is we really want to try to find ways that the machine can more and more automatically function under the F and the A and the I and the R of FAIR. We're trying to automate these functions with these principles. And another vision that, that came from this original paper was that at some point, with FAIR principles in mind, data and applications and the compute resources that sustain them are more and more automatically interoperating. And this is happening through FAIR implementations that are running on highly explicit agreed upon standards. So that was the vision in 2016. And now if you fast forward through the COVID era of 2020 and now 2021, in the Go FAIR community, there has emerged, among other things, what we call the 3-point FAIRification framework. And this is a very practical, very straightforward way that our stakeholders have figured out how to go from from non-interoperable, non-machine actionable components into higher levels of fairness. And as the name suggests, there's 3 points. There's a focus initially on metadata, and we have a workshop series called Metadata for Machine Workshops that can help stakeholders get a handle of machine actionable metadata for their own purposes. But that is part of a larger FAIR implementation profile, which is, more or less at some point, if you want to implement FAIR, you will be deciding upon many implementation choices. And we've tried to make that a little bit more systematic in this FAIR implementation profile. And then if you have these two things, there's an emerging number of technologies now, the FAIR data point among them, that allow you to then expose your data in the FAIR way. But I will focus just for the next couple minutes here on the metadata for machine workshops and the FAIR implementation profile, because I will offer this as a direct challenge to the organizations online here. What is going to be your FAIR implementation profile? So if we start with the metadata, it's clear from the FAIR principles that metadata is everywhere in the principles, and people even think about it as good machine actionable metadata is already getting you most of the way down the road to FAIR. So we can really profit by focusing our energies just on making sure we have good machine actionable metadata. And I want to point out principle R 1.3, the last principle here, is very much asking us about domain relevant community standards. This is a part of FAIR. And so regardless of any of the technology and infrastructure involved, at some point, we need to go to the domain experts. We need to go to people, say, in Agri-Food, and ask them what their domain relevant community standards are. And this is the job of the metadata for machine workshop, is to work with a domain expert who may not necessarily be an expert in metadata, but we team them up with a FAIR, with a FAIR metadata expert. And the output of these workshops are FAIR metadata schema. So that's to say these schema are themselves an instance of FAIR data. So they are like technical components of FAIR. But we know they're domain specific because we built that with the domain expert. And then we try to find as much reuse as possible, realizing that a lot of metadata components are either generic or they do carry over from one use case to the other. So we try to minimize the reinvention of the wheel in the context of these workshops. And all the while, we're trying to focus on these domain relevant standards. Over the last few years, the metadata for machine workshop context or workshop has been widely accepted, and we have now a growing list of requests for additional workshops. So I expect that these workshops will try to find a more formalized approach. But this is very much satisfactory because we see M4Ms as a way to scale the production of fair metadata. And here's my first challenge then to those on the line today. These were organizations that were in the email that Martin wrote to me when he asked me to present here today. And so I could very much challenge the organizations here. Do you have in mind already fair metadata components that you would be able to implement at the moment? And if not, perhaps there's metadata for machine workshop activities we could enter into to help you define for yourself the fair metadata components that you would need. And then just a few more slides to say, metadata is one thing, but there's other principles as well. And so I'm listing here the FAIR principles, and with the robot icon, there's the principles that we can directly address in the metadata for machine workshop. But there's a lot of other implementation choices that need to be made to make your data fair. And this is just a very abbreviated questionnaire. We do have a pretty sophisticated platform where those communities that are wanting to go fair can enter. And it's a kind of a wizard environment where you are given these questions and then a list of possible solutions. And you can begin to compose what we call your fair implementation profile. And because of this tooling, we can even begin to guarantee kind of levels of fairness that you can achieve in that process. Over October, November, we ran a series of workshops with this latest tooling. And we have now 25 communities that have completed these detailed fair implementation profiles. The FIPS themselves are also machine actionable. They're also fair data. So we can begin to work with them and analyze them with the hope that the fair implementation profiles of different communities can now be compared directly, and revisions can be much more intelligently decided on, that could lead to convergence between the domain relevant standards of different communities. So by mapping the landscape in this way, we begin to get a better feeling for more efficient strategies towards fair implementation. This is one example of that kind of analysis. You have 25 communities by 25 communities here listed, and the intensity of the color in the matrix is showing you the degree of overlap between the fair implementation profiles of these very diverse communities. And so lastly, I would just like to end by saying, with another challenge, more broadly, what is the fair implementation profile for these and maybe other related organizations that would see fair as an important element of their work going forward? And with that, I would like to say thank you and just give some acknowledgement to very talented people who are working behind the scenes here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thanks for taking us through this. I think the FAIR principles are very well known in general, but also, again, the precision here, and I think the relevance for the rural communities, as well, of course, as the food and farming, I think is very clear. And obviously, just want to make that point again. So one of the NGOs working like AEF is in the agri sector. Well, OASC is across, all sectors and all parts of society, including, fair AI and findable. So maybe you would want to catch up with Geert, who is later here today, or Davor from OASC. Okay, yeah. Enough of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin.
Great. If I can share my screen again, and actually you need to stop sharing it. Yes. Okay. So this was Eric, and just to say, Marcus, first, actually, we need to go to Luis from the Alliance for IoT Innovation, because we inserted Eric there for the urgency. So if you allow, Marcus, we go first to you, Luis. And you, among other things, you represent the Alliance for IoT Innovation and the working group there, who also did a nice white paper on some of the things around the markets that are forming around IoT data and so on. But please give us your vision and your view on these things. And again, 5 to 7 minutes. I know it's hard to compress in that sense, but thanks for joining and for being with us.
Okay, thank you so much, Martin, for the invitation. And may I ask you to share? Okay, thank you. Because just have a few slides, but it will be easier to share the message. Okay, very good. So thanks again for the invitation and for this even short, this important slot. Okay, so as Martin said in his presentation, my name is Luis Perez. I'm Executive Director of Gradient, an RTO in ICT Technologies in Spain, but I'm also chairing the AIoT working group on agriculture, and this is actually the reason why I'm here today. Just to put into context, AIoT is the Alliance for Internet of Things Innovation. It's a private alliance and not-for-profit organization for contributing basically to the creation of a more dynamic European ecosystem and fostering the take-up of IoT technologies in Europe. So the alliance is more than 100 members, comprising, well, large companies, SMEs, research centers, and other kind of organizations. And we are internally organized in working groups, some of them addressing horizontal transversal issues like innovation ecosystems, standardization in the IoT area, and policy recommendations. And then we have other groups which are more specifically devoted to vertical sectors, vertical issues aligned with key economic sectors in Europe. And one of these sectors is agriculture, which is the working group I'm representing here today. This working group is more than 60, 70 members. So it's about that size, and we have been very active, especially during the last year, in previous consultations, also by the European Commission on the data spaces instrument. So thanks again for the possibility to provide our views. I will make it very short because the agenda for today is really packed for this workshop. So I would like to start just pointing out, giving a pointer to a paper that AOTI published quite recently, was in October last year, about IoT and edge computing convergence, which is very much aligned to the content of today's workshop. So basically, our view is that IoT, I mean, the convergence between IoT and edge computing has the potential to open the way for new applications, generating new growth, new industrial opportunities in Europe. That's for sure, and we are strong advocates on IoT and edge computing in the marriage of these two worlds. But the paper is also providing a couple of recommendations to make the best to capture the best of this opportunity for the next years in Europe. I will not go into the detail of this because I guess these slides will be shared later, and you can just click on the link and go through the paper. But I would like to point out two of them. So the first recommendation is the need, I mean, to state clearly the need for a single market for IoT edge computing, and this is because okay, edge computing means let's say going back to local, but what we think that we should avoid is that shifting to local means bringing more fragmentation to the ecosystem. So this is why it's necessary this single market for IoT and edge devices and systems founded on open standards, able to connect seamlessly on a plug-and-play basis to the edge and the cloud. And in order to avoid this fragmentation, is also the second recommendation here. We need, of course, a trustworthy infrastructure, but that is strongly built on flexible federation, basically to avoid this fragmentation we were saying before. But okay, this is a very high level generic, let's say, recommendation on IoT and edge computing. So what about agriculture? Well, Okay, let's start by the upside and very quickly. Okay, edge computing when applied to agriculture can bring a number of benefits. Some of them were pointed out before by previous speakers. I would highlight two of them. First of all, going to this more local infrastructure can be a way to reduce the connectivity issues that we have um, in every place in Europe, especially when talking about rural areas. So this can bring a positive impact in lowering this connectivity barrier that has been analyzed many times before in many different forms. So this is the first, let's say, positive effect. Second positive effect is that okay, this more local infrastructure approach is well in line with the traditional organizational models that have been using in farming for many years. I mean, cooperative-like models at local or regional level, which are models which are, let's say, very used to share knowledge and share infrastructure. And this is very much in line with the edge computing, model. And this has another side effect, another positive side effect, which is aligned with the trust issue that was also mentioned by some speaker before. Trust is one of the, I'm speaking about trust in a very generic way. But trust is one of the barriers, one of the main barriers for having a wider adoption of digital farming technologies, especially when it comes to data sharing. By relying on this edge computing model, keeping the data, the core data close to the core, I mean, where it's generated, is something that can help to provide more trust and to facilitate also the adoption of this kind of technologies. But okay, there are also some downsides, or at least some warnings that we must point to. And first of all, complexity. Okay, be careful with bringing more technical complexity because in the end, also technical complexity means a higher cost, and it's also more difficult to maintain the systems and so on. And this is very closely linked to the question to, okay, where this edge computing infrastructure should be deployed. I don't think we must be talking about deploying, I mean, creating data centers at every farm. We must think of different solutions, probably, okay, taking advantage of these cooperative organizational models. And okay, second point, to make it very short, is about, okay, decentralization. We are talking about decentralization necessarily when talking about edge computing and IoT. Let's be careful in that decentralization means that silos are going to be created again, especially when we have been working for many years in the direction of breaking down these silos and opening these barriers. And this is especially important when it comes to data sharing. We published also in IoTI last year a specific paper on IoT data marketplaces for the agri-food sector, and we strongly believe that the future must be decentralized, very much in line with the edge computing models. But this should be made in a way which is compatible with data markets that can create value in the future in the agri-food sector. So basically, I'm not going into details. Again, links are provided to the paper, but just to point out to the main message is, okay, let's focus on making things, making data findable, discoverable, interoperable. That's the main message. And now, just to finish, okay, how can we summarize this in a very short statement? Okay, maybe something in this direction. Okay, so let's build in the potential benefit of IoT and on edge IoT for the future of agriculture. but let's have in mind these two things: keep complexity as low as possible, and keep the doors as open as possible to not avoid the creation of new value. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luis. And I think also your recommendations, I mean, it resonates with the previous speakers, but also about keeping the complexity low. I think this is also the way I hear you about loose couplings, right? So of course there's complexity where there's complexity, but let's not spread that evenly over the landscape. And it's interesting then you say, oh, let's not have a data center at every farm. But then in the digital decade, it says we want edge nodes all over the place. So what is that? Is a farm an edge node? Is it bigger? Is it smaller? So we're getting, you know, closer to something which Joel and Rolf and the colleagues from the IoT unit are looking at and should be looking at. So what are the actual implementation scales here? Where are the nodes that are pivotal and that need to be, you know, tightly linked, and where is the looser coupling? So it's really inspiring to see such concrete recommendations, always also forward-looking to the market, the data market. Yes, so thank you. We continue. I just share here for the record keeping the slide with our program and the names. We move now. Where we, I would say, have had the more strategic agendas and positions. So the priorities and the starting points. Okay, we heard from the fair, that was meant also as a starting point and a priority. But please, Marcus, representing in this case, the communities, the people and all the ways of organizing around them. Could you please share some of your thoughts here and maybe start by introducing yourself to the colleagues around the table? Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Martin. Good afternoon. I'm Marcos Nogueira. I'm Marcos Nogueira. I'm coordinating the H2020 Auroral project. Just a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm also the permanent representative of Alentejo to the EU and involved as a long-term researcher with a lot of things related with data and modeling. So that's really a pleasure to be on this event. I have to thank very much for this invitation. I think that as a project coordinator, I pay a lot of attention to the cooperation between projects. I think that's indeed critical for the success of each one of our projects, to have this environment, this ambience of cooperation, this willingness of cooperation, and the work you are doing, Martin, under NGIoT network. It's really a very good, very good expression of that need of cooperation, and also an expression of how successful and impactful it is to, in general, to have better results from all this massive European effort and to have impacts at European level. Auroral is, I'm going to share the screen just quickly. Auroral is the, okay, I hope you can see it. It's,
yes, we see it.
Yes.
Well,
okay, fine. So that's Auroral is very much about integrating components and integrating to provide an architecture for the integration of all these aspects into the smart community concept, and making smart community to be feasible, valid, and attractive for the smaller agglomerations, so villages, towns, and to make it work in rural areas as it may work in more dense or more or metropolitan areas. That's important if of course we are all committed to the idea and the standard that nobody may be left behind. When we talk about digitalization, we have also to consider the rural areas. Okay, that's a matter of equality, but that's also a matter of strategy, because the step forward we have to give, all of us, to the, I would say, to a better, more efficient, safer ecological and environmentally sound agriculture needs a lot of digitalization, a lot of data, a lot of IoT, and also I would say a lot of modeling. Let's consider the efficiency of the rural system and farming as part of as part of a system. It works better if it is well integrated into an ecosystem. In that sense, we can't rely on the principle that we have a farm that is isolated. That's bad for nature, and that's also bad for the economic ecosystem. We need to have a small brands, small farms, and all those integrated into a smart community. So that's very important that we have this interoperable, shared, and open environment, digital environment for the several farms and the several uses, the several end uses to interconnect. That's one part of the thing. And another part of the thing is that in agriculture, the challenges are not only the capability of interconnecting a tractor to internet. No, it's in agriculture we have wide scale, space scale, surface scale, very different scales within that scale. So that's typically a cascaded environment. We have a multi-layer, a multidisciplinary challenge for operating, for controlling, for optimizing, and very much a need of working with time scales that are from 30 years to one season. And that's different of time scales that makes agriculture very difficult as an ecosystem to control. So I would say that more than an internet of people, an internet of things, we need an internet of models to work with agriculture. That's impossible to optimize, and optimizing is not only economically, but optimizing ecologically the agriculture systems without considering the several time scales, without considering the multivariable aspect, the multidimensional aspect, and without considering the different space scales interfering. So in that sense, it's impossible to optimize if we don't consider the modeling aspects on the time and space, multi-scale, multidisciplinary. So we need an internet of models. In that sense, we have not only edge computing, because we need data for those models, and we need those models to provide systems with data, but we have also some sort of edge approach in the sense of innovative approach to that. That's the only way to optimize agriculture. That's the only way to have green valleys in Europe that able to deliver the proper, safe, and healthy food supply we need, but at the same time protecting nature and keeping the rural areas working well and preparing for the challenges of the future. Because of course we may have in 30 years, 20 years, the 30 years, so 2050 horizon, we are expecting to have totally different rural areas with different human, social, economical ecosystems, but at the same time to having it capable of delivering the food supply Europe needs. So in that sense, we have to optimize the agriculture aspects within an ecosystem that is also evolving. Once again, the time scales, the space scales, and the multivariable aspects to be considered. So that's very much an issue of integration, and that's what our oral is about. That's I have very much to appreciate the effort that the European Commission from DG Connect and also Martin Brinskov with OAC and other initiatives is doing on the topic of interoperability. I would say multi-interoperability, because we have to guarantee integration and interoperability at the same time. And from my side, from our oral side, the only thing I have to say is that here we are to cooperate with all of you and to bring better and stronger solutions together. So this is these 5 minutes in this presentation are just to say that we are here for you. We are totally open and willing to cooperate. And so please never hesitate addressing to us and coming to us every time there is a solution, there is an innovation that can be part of an architecture, of an ecosystem for smart communities. Within those smart communities, we have several verticals. Here today we are talking about farming, but there is also mobility, energy, health, tourism, and others. And we have, of course, horizontal aspects considering that interoperability and cybersecurity in order to make sure that it works in the integral manner. Anyway, Aurora is starting, so we are in our 3rd month. We have more 45 months to come, and an after project period to expand, develop, and implement large-scale solutions for our pilot regions, our smart communities. So in that sense, the only key word is just openness to cooperate with you and to welcome all the contributions you may bring for the project. So that's saying that's critical to have this cooperation with other projects. I have also to address a very kind word to my project officer, Doris Mackart, because of the vision that DG Agri and Doris herself is bringing to this aspect. So we are understanding that rural areas are not only about farming, rural areas are not only about tourism, but rural areas are very much about integrating all the aspects that have to be considered on the long-term vision for the rural development. And that means protecting the environment and protecting the human communities there in order to make them to be really the not only the landscape, the physical landscape of Europe, but the human landscape of the future of Europe. So thank you for that approach. So that's just what I had to say today. It's essentially greeting all of you and expressing our willingness to cooperate with all the projects that are addressing the same topic. So thank you, Martin, to invite me. Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to address this such a nice audience as you have here today.
Thanks a lot, Marcos. Did you mention the event that you have in May?
Yeah, that's, but I think all of you are going to receive some notification about it, but indeed there is a smart community summit promoted by the suggested by the European Commission and promoted by the Portuguese presidency of the European Union. That's a very interesting event. We have 2 days to debate technical aspects, 1 day in the middle to integrate it into sound statements and sound ideas for the future, and 2 more political days. And we have a special session kept for inter-project cooperation. Once again, making that strong point that projects have to cooperate better and more in order to achieve stronger impact. But yes, thank you for remembering that. But that's indeed also again an opportunity for all of us to come together.
But that's very good. Thank you, Marcos. We will learn more here also. Okay, yes, exactly. So I'd like to share the screen here. So this put together, you could say, was maybe from the side of the communities and from the side of, well, technologies, if you will, some really fundamental, maybe even value-based positions and starting points. So what we have now set up is a roundtable with a couple of introductions, because we are in fact seeking to bring these experiences together to exactly address the interdisciplinary situation warranted here, as noted by Doris in the beginning. So what we're bringing together is the Agri-Food, represented by projects, by networks, by lots of stakeholders, and the cross-cutting smart communities efforts in living.in.eu. So can we take the learnings together and progress on these issues? That is, of course, not a given, but I would say it looks quite promising. And there also learnings are being put together in, well, a white paper. So I'd like to invite these colleagues to the floor. So Daoud from Wageningen, Arne Berer from SINTEF, Gert de Tant from OASC, Omar Lumi from Nokia, Kevin from the Walton Institute, Stefan Rehling from Fraunhofer, Harald from RTB and various projects, and Roberto Jimenez from Europe and also part of DRURAL. So in order to have a little bit of context here, so there are many learnings and many voices, but I guess the drivers behind the writing here has very much been you, Daoud, Arne, and Gert. And then maybe we can go around the table and hear the other colleagues as well. So I don't know if you want to give some opening statements, maybe starting with you, Daoud. If you're comfortable doing that, you can show slides or not. Just tell me to unshare, and I will unshare. I know that a few of the other colleagues do have slides and have sent them here. So maybe just when you speak for the first time, just a very quick word about yourselves. But please instruct me if I should unshare the screen from my side. Daoud.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you, Martin, also for the invitation. It's a really nice and interesting workshop. So I have prepared some slides.
Okay,
I could share my screen. Let me see. Share screen. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Not in full screen, but fairly big part of the screen, yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, just indeed to shortly introduce myself, I'm a researcher in information management at Wageningen University in Research. Yeah, and thus focusing on different technologies, methodologies, which has to do with digital innovation within the agri-food and within the agri-food domain, the food systems, which we are talking about. Yeah, I guess most of the participants know Wageningen University and Research. Mainly three themes: society and well-being, food, feed, and bio-based production, and natural resources and living environment, which has its own perspectives and subtopics. Generally, there are two partners, university side and the research side. Just some figures on the right corner. I am located at Wageningen Research. Just to go deep further in the organization structure, I have circled the institute where I am working, which is Wageningen Economic Research. But you have also other institutes, and also the university has its own chairs and research activities. So within Wageningen Economic Research, and this figure is might be also known by you, we have developed this approach, a multidisciplinary, collaborative, agile approach, which is focusing, or the main focus is from the user perspective. It starts with a lean multi-actor approach together with other stakeholders by developing and creating knowledge and applications multidisciplinary in different iterations. So the lean startup methodology is incorporated. and this is being supported by different disciplines like data science, modeling, and project management, but also business modeling, governance, and ethics. Its own ecosystem development side, and the project management and coordination. So for me, and I guess also for today, the data modeling part is the focus. So we had some IOF workshops, probably also known by you, just a summarization. In December, we had one with a focus on approaches, successes, and challenges of EU projects. And on March, recently, the 10th, we had a workshop on processes, procedures of standardization and semantic interoperability. And we have an involved community, which is to a large extent also attending this workshop. But how do we continue? We have the fair implementation profiles. We have different organizations who could facilitate. But I think we need a roadmap with work packages, and we are getting a common view on semantics, and to see what is the impact around data models. Yeah, I'm not sure if I go further. I had just some slides as an inspiration. There is this reference data model for the agro domain.
Maybe just so I think the good thing would be why are we working together? Why are we doing this white paper? I mean, you mentioned the previous works that's there, so maybe just one thought to leave, and then we go to Arne to give that just to have like a a nucleus for the discussion.
Yeah, I think the good thing for having these discussions and working together is insights and knowledge on different approaches, but also the existence of different data sets and models, especially if it comes to reference data and reference data models. I think that is key for efficient data sharing and interoperable information systems. So that would be
okay, very good.
In some sentences.
No, that's very good. Okay, so Arne, over to you. You've been very active since quite some time, and in let's say both ends of the spectrum, right? I mean, you've been part of Vicinity, you've been part of other initiatives here. So I'm not seeing you, but I'm seeing that you are connected to.
Yeah, you can hear me, I hope.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
guess I'm not allowed to share my camera. I guess if you can set, I can show that also, but I need to be allowed to do it.
Okay, I cannot do anything here. I'm just waving my arms if I need something done. But thanks, Arne, for being with us and for sharing. So could you complement what we got here? So David, of course, linking to what has been going on in the agri sector and very much the semantic interop there, and then we need to learn from each other. So from your side, how does this look? Thank you.
Yes. Do you see my whole screen, or do you see the one with the slides on the side?
We see the whole screen, the screen, the whole screen, and nothing but the screen.
Okay, well, that's good. Very good. Then you can see me too now, I think. So,
yes, we do. Is that live or it's not?
Well, it's kind of live. It's I'm at my mountain cabin now. It was actually yesterday when it was blue sky. It's a bit cloudy today, but that's out of the window in the room I'm sitting.
Very
okay,
jealous.
So I'll talk about actually a little twist on this, given the discussion we had this morning on digital twins, digital twin pipelines for rural, smart city, and Agri-Food architectures. I'm involved in the Demeter project, but Kevin will talk about that later. So I'll put on my hat now in the broader scope of the Big Data Valley Association and the AI Data Robotics Partnership, which is quite related to the topic today. The digital twin is coming up in all domains. This is from the destination Earth, which is quite relevant when you talk about agriculture because of the location importance of almost everything in agriculture. The Big Data Valley Association has created this reference model. And you see that smart cities and rural, as well as Agri-Food, is part of this a lot of various technical areas that we need to bring together. Geospatial is one of the important data types, as well as IoT and time series. There is a box here for personal industrial data sharing, including also research data and public data as a baseline for AI and cognitive computing and analytics. But there is a lot of cross-cutting areas, technologies from the IoT to the HPC to the cloud that needs to be related. And it's indeed my main message that if you go through pipeline here, which is in the middle, from data acquisition to data preparation and storage, analytics, AI, machine learning, action, interaction, and visualization, with the mapping to the AI data and robotics framework to the left and the BDVA reference model to the right. A lot of the active associations and groups we have comes together. So I have this bigger pipeline model, which is using the one you just saw on top, going from data acquisition and collection to storage and preparation to analytics, AI, machine learning, action, interaction, and visualization, put into a digital twin specialization. So handling all of the input data to digital twin, that includes also historical data, digital twin data representations, models, which includes both hybrid data-driven and physical models, also cognition, machine learning, and visualization and control. All of these areas can actually be deployed in different parts of our infrastructure. It can all be running on the edge. It can be shared on the premises. It can go into the transition with the fog to the cloud. It can run on HPC. It can run in mobile devices and actually in combined sensors actuators. So when we look at organizations below here that are active in this landscape, we are of course now starting from IoT at the edge with IoT and NGIoT. But as we move on and looking into the data representations, into the machine learning and analytics, we are seeing a lot of other organizations that have something to bring to the table. We heard about it today, the IDS and GaiaX, the Common European Data Spaces, the Big Data Value Association.
I think we lost the connection to Arne. Let's wait for a second and see what comes back. Otherwise, we will move to you, Gert. So you can prepare yourself at least. Yeah, so that's the beauty of being in a cabin. When it works, it's wonderful. When you're not connected, well, you're really not connected. Okay, Arne, we move on here. I give the floor to you. Gerd?
Unfortunately, I can't share my screen until
no, that's because
yeah,
that's
okay.
Yeah, so now you can.
Okay, so we'll take
rural areas. There's exhibit 1.
Yeah. I'm searching for my screen. There it is. Yeah, I have these fancy neon slides.
Okay.
So
Honest, I see you are back, but just say we moved on to here to Gerd, but it's a round table, so we go around. Okay, so no worries. You have the floor, Gerd.
Thank you. I'm Gert. I'm a technical architect at OAC. My responsibility, if you see this nice neon drawing, is more on the right side.
Gerd, just in case somebody didn't know OAC, maybe you can just say what the heck is.
I'm OAC is open and agile smart cities. And also communities. We represent, we are on the demand side, so we represent our city members. And yeah, we work really on technical interoperability mechanisms to really support solutions that are developed for cities and rural areas to be really support them and to scale them across different areas and different cities. So that solutions that are, for example, developed in Tuscany can be used in Flanders or can be used in some part in Germany or in Finland or even across the globe. So that solutions that are developed in Japan can come to Europe or then travel to Canada. So that development of these solutions really becomes a high scalable solution where companies can invest a lot of money in developing really cool and innovative solutions, and cities can acquire these solutions in a more achievable way, because there is much more scale for these companies, so they can actually lower the risk. So it's really about lowering the risk of doing these innovative solutions. And interoperability is always, integration is always a high cost in these different solutions, because we're talking about data everywhere. But one of the key aspects is, and how can we reach each other's data? And interoperability is a key point there. And that's what with the minimal interoperability mechanisms we try to solve. Really in a technical way, on how do we solve these interoperability issues? How do we make sure that data that is in different solutions, that is in different areas, how do we make sure that they can be used across different locations and different areas? So for that, Open Agile Smart Cities really represents the cities in this, and we talk about the MIMS in several areas. It's really on the right side of this drawing. So if I go a bit deeper, let's go to Control L and then do this. Hopefully that works. So really have a number of data of minimal interoperability mechanisms here. So first of all, on the top level, it's actually MIM2 is, yeah, what about the data models? Which data models are used? How can we have shared data models across each other, and really know that the items that we are talking about, that they were talking about the same thing, the same attributes, and those attributes mean the same thing. So we're really talking about several, so we are not the ones that are developing those data models. We are really pointing to the repositories that have valuable data models. Fireware has a very lively ecosystem there regarding which calls the Fireware Smart Data Models, where a lot of initiatives have contributed there. You have models around mobility, around energy, around crowd flow observed, around green developments, around waste management. We have, of course, OJC regarding geospatial, GTFS, GBFS, DTDL, REC core, which is really about buildings, OMG, ISA. So we really have a lot of initiatives where we really point to those data models as the ones that we think are interesting for these different kinds of initiatives to use. Then we have, of course, minimal interoperability mechanism 1, really about, yeah, you have these measurements, you have these things that are measured or data that you gather. If you add all the context around it, so for example, if you get in a measurement of something you measure on a crop field, how do you know where that field is located? What device took the measurement? What was the weather at that moment in time? Or how is that device calibrated? All those things, that's the context we added, and then we make that available to everybody who wants to really work on that data. And the availability is really on subscription level, but also on query levels, geospatial queries, all those things are in place there. We really are working on the ETSI NGSI LD specification and are really collaborating with ETSI on this topic. And then we have MIM3, which is really about, you have this data, it's available through your context information system, it's on a shared data model, but how do you make it available to everybody out there? And how do you negotiate about a contract, and how do you make that data available in a way that is sustainable for everybody? If somebody accesses your data, you don't want him to access it, for example, every millisecond and get all your data, because that would be a very issue on your system. And maybe you can have a contract about it, or you have a contract where you say, okay, you can use my data, but you need to reference this and this in your system. So that's really what the contract handling is. Also, it could be about, for example, really payments and all those things that could be handled by this one. And then we are, and at this moment in this stage, really further developing the next ones, which is MIM7 is a candidate, could be about geospatial, really about how do we get those geospatial really into our data, which I think is in rural areas also could be a key aspect. How do you get that data into your systems? And how do you represent it? And how do you make the connection from geospatial, which used to be a very statistical, static world? How do you get that really streaming data in there? And then, yeah, the ones that rather high level of focus is today is in how do you work with personal data? For example, if you talk about mobility.
I think
sorry,
just in
maybe
the
a bit
interest of
shorter
time.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but maybe we have the picture, if you allow me. And of course, I mean, everybody can see how, okay, so there's the agri information models, there's the ISOBUS, there's the FAIR, there's the MIMS, there's the, I mean, you start to see this picture of various initiatives that are not trying to do the same, but that are coming together and that are not driven by technology, but actually by community and societal needs. So if you allow me, I would take these as starting points and open up the table. By the way, Omar Ilumi from Nokia excuses himself. He has an unexpected thing that he needs to see to. So
do I stop sharing my screen and
yes, please, okay. Because then I can go back to sharing here. I mean, of course, we can see your pretty faces, but other than that, we can also kind of manage the table here. So I will share it here. So from the colleagues around the table, what we have here is, I think, a very good representation of various initiatives, and now we heard more or less from the left side. If we can move to the right side of the table, so Kevin and Stefan, you are leading various initiatives, but including the agri smart farming, large innovation actions, and Harl and Roberto, you are leading other innovation actions. So Harl from IOF 2020 is the large-scale pilot, and Roberto, the newly started D-Rural, which you are the technical lead of. So perhaps from that side, I don't know, Kevin and Stefan, if you would go first in some remarks there, and then we can go, to a broader discussion from towards also how well are things aligned as it is now, and perhaps how can we do. So you have the floor, Kevin.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. I'll just show a couple of slides, Martin.
Yeah, sure. You can do it.
I'm conscious of the time. So, hey, everybody. My name is Kevin Doolan. I come from what's now called the Walton Institute, and for the past 25 years it was called TSSG. We rebranded ourselves last week, but that's a whole other story. I just want to briefly show very high level some of the architecture work that's going on in Demeter. For more information on this, obviously people can go to our website, but we are producing a combined white paper with Martin and with Stefan and a few other people as well that we're going to hope to get to after Easter. So Demeter is the Greek goddess of agriculture, and we are a 60 partner project, and we are running a series of 20 pilots to verify the architecture that we're putting in place. The main goal of Demeter is integration of data in the supply chain, essentially at a data level. So just if you take a very much bird's eye view of our architecture, it looks a little bit like here on screen. So at the very heart of the system, we have, excuse me, the Demeter Enabler Hub. And in the Enabler Hub is where any interested developers or stakeholders can register the capabilities their services offer and the resources they can offer. And so to us, they act as what we call Demeter providers. Then Demeter consumers can browse the Demeter Enabler Hub to discover the various capabilities and the resources matching the various criteria they have for some technology they want to deploy, for example. The hub then also identifies any identities that are needed and verifies those identities, and then provides support for establishing secure connection between consumers and providers. Also, the enablers developed within Demeter, which I'll talk about in a second, are made available through this hub. And these can be either services that are developed within Demeter, or they can be services and resources that are offered by external stakeholders. So, for example, third-party service providers or platform providers. So we recently just started our first set of open call projects where such services are being developed and trialed. We're also actually running a 3-day workshop internally in Demeter in parallel to this meeting, where we're going through our 20 pilots and looking at their interactions with the various services and enablers within the system as well. The Demeter Dashboard on the screen here, this is really the sole entry point into our Demeter ecosystem. So it's for Demeter developers and other stakeholders as well. And it makes available 2 different types of spaces. So we have the stakeholder open collaboration space, and we have our agricultural interoperability space. And the dashboard then makes these 2 spaces available to the human users within Demeter. So the dashboard also allows the end users of Demeter, like farmers, agronomists, cooperatives, and so on, to be able to discover what Demeter-enabled apps are available and to give them user-friendly interfaces so then they can access and understand and control data that's either captured by Demeter or inferred by the intelligence system within Demeters. Well, I'm just, sorry, I scrolled too quick. Give me 1 second, I'll start this presentation again. Don't know what happened there. Okay.
Are you done with it, or you're still?
No, wait.
Well, that's an efficient way to.
I hope everybody, you can watch it. You can watch playback in slow motion for the rest of my presentation. No, let me go here. So I mentioned already, our architecture is very much focused around a series of enabling technologies, or Demeter Enablers, as we call them. Can you see those slides? No, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
we see the slides, no problem.
So 2 types of enablers in the system. We've got Demeter core enablers, which are, as we see them, they're mandatory for any stakeholder that wants to expose or share its own resources. And these resources are made available through the hub. It also provides support for communication and networking, semantic and functional interoperability, security, and so on. And it includes the client for the Demeter hub. Then we also have Demeter Advanced Enablers. These are optional. They're discoverable and they're accessible within the Enabler Hub. So for example, they can include things like data and knowledge enablers, decision support and performance monitoring enablers, and integrated delivery enablers as well. So if you look at these enablers then in terms of our overall the functional view of our reference architecture, it looks as follows. And the key element I just want to point out here is the Agricultural Information Model, the AIM. So for us, the AIM is a common semantic data model that integrates various existing models, and it'll capitalize on dominant solutions such as NGIoT-based Agri-Food data models of Fireware, the Safe for Agri, Adapt Foodie, AgroVoc, and so on. It also incorporates and extends existing ontologies and vocabularies that are already available in the Agri-Food domain. It can provide a semantic representation of any data or information collected and processed and exchanged within Demeter. It's a modular model in which pilot-specific custom ontologies can be mapped, and all components in the Demeter architecture essentially will have AIM-compliant wrappers built into them. So just the last picture I want to leave you with is just very, very high-level view of the full reference architecture. As I said, it is presented in the white paper that we're doing in conjunction with some of the other projects like Atlas at the moment, and which we hope to release in the next, hopefully, month or so. That's it from me.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Stefan, do you want to show some, just so we have things on the table, and then we can talk about, you know, how they link up, because I think it's kind of. Do you remember there was one of these slides in the morning for those of you who were there, and a couple of the municipalities, they said, oh yes, all the managers, they're like, there's so much out there, I'm confused. I think this roundtable shows a little bit of why.
One thing that maybe we could mention is that the AIM model that Kevin showed is based on NGSI-LD, which you also have heard about before, which is part of MIMS. So it is equal, even though you don't see it just from the name, but it's the same as we have heard and we'll hear more about.
I know, and it's wonderful because actually there is a way out, I think. Stefan, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my slides. I have to admit they are not as fancy as the neon OSC slides, but I actually like them. So can you see the screen now?
Yes, it's good, and it's full screen.
So, okay, then
we hear you fine.
thank you very much for inviting me to this interesting workshop. My name is Stefan Rilling. I'm with Fraunhofer Institute for Intelligent Analysis and Information Systems, and I'm the coordinator of the Atlas project. And I just show you 2 slides about our Atlas interoperability architecture, because this is, I would say, our main contribution to the white paper already mentioned. And yeah, interoperability is the key topic in Atlas we are working on. We are also a large-scale pilot, and our aim is to demonstrate all the technology we develop in the course of the project during a multitude of large-scale pilot studies. But I would like to focus just on the architectural elements we have so far developed, so far drafted in Atlas, and which have already been implemented to a certain part. So we are currently trying to bring all the things we have envisioned, now bringing these things to life, so to say. So what you see here is a very high level overview of how we want to achieve interoperability. So what we see in Atlas is that interoperability is to a large extent is the capability of exchanging data, and what we are going to do is enabling a data exchange between systems, between software systems, so to say. And we have drafted architecture as kind of a interoperability network, which we call Atlas network. It's a decentralized network of participants, and these participants providing software systems which solve a specific problem in agriculture, which map a agricultural process. And these software systems are offering services. And these services are the basic interoperability building blocks in Atlas. So these are provided then by the participants. And what we envision in Atlas is to standardize these services. We call these standards a service template, which is in the end a full description of the operational context of such a service and its API. So this is what we are doing in Atlas, and what you see here in the picture. The aim is to interconnect very different systems. So we have infill sensors, we have agricultural machines, we have operation data from farming operations, we have software systems, and all these participants providing these software systems and the connected services are decentrally organized in the network. We only have a minimum of central components, which we call service registry and equipment center. And as you see it here in the picture, it is mainly about interconnecting cloud-based systems, platforms. But we also have envisioned to cover the edge computing part in Atlas. So we have developed a concept and are already implementing this also of bringing application, of bringing apps into the edge of the network, providing computation capabilities there, and interconnecting this edge to the whole interoperability network. Just one further slide to show some details here, how it's intended to work. So what you see here is on top, the central component, the Atlas registry, where participants and the participant services are registered. think of it as a phone book, for example, a directory which you can use to do service discovery. Then you have the participants here. One example could be a combination of a farm management system provided by one participant and a machinery platform provided by another participant. And the machinery platform offers a service to, for example, to exchange task data with a machine. And FMIS provides functionality to create tasks, to visualize task data, and what a end user wants to do. For example, a farmer wants to exchange data from the FMIS with the machinery platform. So through these standardized services, it is quite easy for a farm management system provider to develop a task service client, which then could, making use of all the technology and infrastructure provided by Atlas, then to interconnect to the machinery platform and exchange the data on behalf of the user. So this is the key concept here. We have central components. We have participants holding user accounts, and we have users having an account on the different participants' systems. And Atlas organizes this interconnection of systems, enabling the flow of data. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And then perhaps if you unshare the screen, we can see the colleagues. So Harald and Roberto. So if I invite you to be sort of the discussants here, you can. I mean, clearly lots of work has been done, but if we start with the first question, I mean, how well do you see the connectedness between the different initiatives here? And Harald, I mean, feel free to just say in a sentence, which position do you come from? I mean, I mentioned a few initiatives that you've been part of, but how do you, based on that, see how are things aligning? And I would say on the organizational and initiative part, maybe not so much on the technical part.
Martin, thank you very much. So my name is Harald Sundmaker. I'm from ATB Institute for Applied Systems Technology in Bremen, Northern Germany. Now, possibly first look in the past. There we were talking a lot about tech, about distribution, decentralized, batteries, and all this stuff. We did not solve everything. However, we did quite a lot. I remember meetings in clusters and RFID clusters in 2008 and so when we started, which evolved now in the AIoTi and so on. So now we are more, and thank you very much for this question, Martin. I think that's our present now. We are here in the moment where we are talking about communities. And in the moment, I'm working as leader of work package on IoT technologies in the IOF 2020 project. And there we have 33 sub-projects working on very specific solutions, validating IoT technology. We have 5, 6, 7 teams working on ISO standards from different perspectives, from GS1, from AEF, from, well, not to go in the details, but there we have different communities. And as Arne already said, quite a lot of stuff, also like NGILD. Also in IOF, we have the colleagues contributing to that. And we have a lot of teams looking, I would say, in the similar direction. And we have, let's say, connecting points in quite a lot of moments. However, I think we need to see it, we're here in the present, as a layered approach. More or less thinking, if we're looking on the long-term standardization, as we look at the colleagues working for decades on certain standards already, which is nothing which will from now to tomorrow, let's say, make the next perfect step. It's then also, let's say, the things which are in between and which are also then more agile, which can do really tomorrow something. What are the agile steps? And there, I think this is also what we shall mention, what we also did in IOF from the Agri-Food perspective, not just Agri, but also food perspective, contributing also to the smart data models initiatives, which is really an agile thing. And what also, I think we need to think, where is the win-win strategy? And I also like what we today also again saw in the different presentations. I think the work on the MIMS, on the minimum interoperability mechanisms, that we have really not just a standard on data, but also functional components, which are win-win strategies, like what was presented by Stefan, also by Kevin, from the different projects. And I think we can bring this together, and all that it is when we are looking the 33 sub-projects in IOF in 5 different areas. So when we are now, I think that's about bringing together the community. And I think the workshops we have here is really a very good initiative to look towards this community. Now the IOF project is more or less at its end. We are making available information, for instance, in the IoT catalog as others, while also via the website, where it's not just, oh yeah, we did something. It's also about the components. What is there? What can be used? And what can you access? And I think it's very important that we're not just talking about standards, but that we are also, that a developer, which is joining today this webinar or looking further on at a video, knows, yes, that's the place I can go. And there I can take this and that component and facilitate my development. Because clearly, a startup or a SME, a developer there would not go for half a year, or like we did in IOF. We have initiatives like what we did on EPCIS in relation to the ISO standards and CBV, the vocabulary there. It's really quite some initiative, but if I want to do something tomorrow, I would not join straightforward the initiative. It's really about something, what is the takeaway for the agile part? And I think there, especially those projects were also bringing a lot. And we have a lot of takeaway. I think now it's also a question when we're looking to the future, and that's really the convergence of MIMS when we're going in the future. How can we make this available? I think this is also now a challenge, and I think we're facing it, and those workshops are a nice way towards the future.
Thank you very much for that perspective, Harald. Very rich and lots of things in there. Roberto, if I may turn to you, because D-Rural is not actually about agri and food. It's about rural communities and boosting the economies, of course, based on the priorities of the social sides and the nature and so on. So what is your reflection? I mean, D-Rural is booting up now. Where do you see, I mean, in a way, you're the customer, if you can say it like that, for the vision that Harald, he shares. He says, oh, if I were to start today, I know you're not starting today. That's not, don't take it like that. But how do you see it? I mean, on that situation from your side?
You're totally right, Martin. I mean, we are a customer of the technologies here. I mean, it's really interesting and has opened really lot of doors, seeing today so many projects and so many developed technologies, even if we were already aware of what is in the market. But as you said, we are the customer that we expect to put into value most of these technologies. For example, MIMS, that is going to be part of our platform, a core part of it. And our really focus is putting in value the data that we are going to find in the rural communities. I mean, the way that we have started the project, as you said, we have just put and started to work just a couple of months ago, is on focusing on the ecosystems, the communities, trying to get what is important to them, what is the services they would like to use in their communities, what is the way that they are going to really profit from them. Because at the end, what was said at the beginning, it is about creating more inclusive societies. I mean, agriculture is part of the rural, but we have a strong focus in e-health. We have a strong focus in business, rural business creation. And that way, the only way that it can work is all the data has to be profited. The data follows a fair approach. So everyone benefits from it. Everyone creates economies. Everyone is able to boost the economy of data. And for that, the only way to work is to include the rural communities. I mean, core part of our project. In fact, it's I would say 50%, well, 50% maybe is too much, but 3 work packages is around involving rural communities, creating businesses from them, creating data value for them. And also we have several open calls going from month 18 onwards. And there we are not only to include, let's say, users of the technology, that they will have to put a viable and to test a viable, let's say, business with our technology, but also to include new, let's say, new ecosystems up to 8 that they can also be brought to the project and can benefit and implement the technologies. So really, really pleased to be here in this workshop today. I don't want to spend myself, I mean, to say more things about the project and to steal more time from you, but really it's interesting what has been said today.
Very good. I mean, we will of course hear much more from D-Role and our role that Marcos also mentioned before. So maybe now we have half an hour to go, and we still have one more session where we bring in the use cases from the provider side and a little bit of discussion after that. But may I just end off with a quick round of sentiments or notions, maybe on the next steps. This is quite a technical session. So the title is IoT and edge computing, and yes, we will have edge nodes, and there will be lots of them. Okay, so leaving the conversation to go and do something, just going around the table now, Daoud, Anne, and so forth. Could you share some sentiment here? There will be time perhaps for more later, but just going quickly around the table where we are now with the very rich initiative. So Daoud, first you.
Yeah, good question, Martin. I think the sentiment for me is full of energy. I think there is a certain milestone for projects ending and projects starting up, and a lot of opportunities for consolidating, as to say, different knowledge and insights into new solutions.
But perhaps this is also why the networks and the associations are important, because they are stable over projects, and then the projects becomes more like instruments to drive the strategy around the many helixes. So,
yeah.
Okay, yes. Good. Arne, sorry, you had a sort of an abrupt ending, but we will continue, of course, as it goes. But some sentiment you want to share. You have so much experience also, both across the technologies and working with the initiatives.
Yeah, I think my sentiment emerges in the continuation of that from what we heard this morning on the concept of digital twin. I think this is a good extension. IoT and edge is the starting point, but once you want to make this real and get into, say, use cases, you have to span into data handling, data management, analytics, visualization, interaction, and control. We see we are not using that concept so much in agriculture, not in rural, but we could very well do it. It's the same technologies that is needed. It's the same aims we have. We can go to manufacturing, we can go to energy. They are starting to use the terms there. So I would consider that we introduce that as a common concept to bridge together all of these different communities and associations and initiatives, and try to take the best out of each and try to get it to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank you very much.
Hope.
Okay, very good. And of course, if you pull up the work program for the Digital Europe, actually there's data spaces, there's data platforms, there's data digital twins. So there's this hierarchy of complexity, you could say. And then some would even argue then, the twins, that's when you have high precision. The broader concept is it's a digital shadow. And yes, there will be lots more to put together there on the complete picture.
Yeah, so you kind of top of the pyramid, I think.
Or below, whatever.
Yeah.
Again, I'll just show the Living in EU 5 pillars, because we didn't get those, I think, and just for the colleagues to see. Any things for you to leave here on the table for the conversation?
Yeah, I think I really like the comment from Harold. So it's really the developers that needs the tools, and what I see and what I really like is because of these different initiatives, we see really a lot of things become available for companies and developers to really start with these tools. There are really a lot of GitHubs and GitLabs environments available where they can really download components to be used in their architecture and not start from scratch, but really start from something that really works. And they actually have choice, which is also a great thing. And we see also these large companies also stepping into this and also offering choice to developers to do stuff with this and aligning their tools to this, like the digital twin of Microsoft aligning to NGIoT, but also now we see different things available. So I think for developers, it's really a great moment to step in and to really use these infrastructure tools and to build their cool solutions on top of it. So I'm really excited, and also about the different initiatives like in agriculture and the cities and the communities, and getting together these different data spaces that are out there working on the same things and really converging on that interoperability. So I'm quite happy to see how things converge.
Good. So on the tools and the development kit side, there's really, a consolidation convergence potential. Maybe also to point here now, since we are doing both the cross-cutting part and the technical part, I mean, the Living in EU actually has the scope there reflected somehow also in this European interoperability framework for smart cities and communities, which of course includes the rural area. So just to say that, Doris, what you said in the beginning about, getting the interdisciplinary and even multi-perspective approach, I think the initiatives, from what I hear, even now, just from the three sentiments here, is that is actually shaping up somehow. Kevin, from your side, what's the next step, apart from finishing the white paper?
See, you took my answer from me, Martin. I was just going to say,
sorry.
We obviously need to finish the white paper, but we need to disseminate it out and obviously get more people into the discussion as well. And so, for example, we're organizing the Agri-Tech section in IoT Week. That's coming up towards the end of August as well. And we should have some workshop in there around the white paper and what it means for other projects. I know between myself and Stefan, we're organizing a Demeter Atlas. So I suppose a somewhat aligning workshop as well, just between the two projects to learn from each other, and because we're both going broadly in the same direction. And it actually might be an idea for the two new rural projects to maybe engage with Atlas and Demeter, because we've been through this process now for about a year. We've looked at our architecture, we looked at what it means for everything else. So we should be able to share some of our findings from that, rather than, I just have a fear, I'm not saying the guys are going to do this, but I would have a fear that people might start a little bit from scratch again. So yeah, we really need to push the results from all of this work, not just Demeter and Atlas, but everything that's discussed today, and encapsulate it properly and get it promoted out there fully.
No, but I think that's a very nice invitation, and I can say also, I mean, I happen to be the lead or whatever from the Rural Smart Communities Tech Coordination Group, is it called, Roberto? Which is actually trying to, address this issue of not reinventing any wheels that we don't really have to. So I think that's a very good invitation, also directed to you, Roberto, and to the colleagues in our role. Okay, Stefan.
Yes, I mean, I agree with all what has been said so far in this group. So it might look like it's a very technical group, a very technical discussion about IoT, about interoperability, about agri-food technology. But if you just look at this group here, and putting all the views together, we already have a quite holistic view of the whole digital economy, the agri-food economy, the rural economy, we have digital cities in here. So we have already a holistic view on a digital society here and or a digitized society, and we should use this momentum. And what I see, what really needs to be done, and where we could really, I think, make a contribution, is that we somehow make all our great results we have achieved so far, that we make that in a structured way available to the public, that everyone who wants to start a similar project, a related activity, that someone who intends to do this could have does exactly know where to look for concrete technology, what is there, and which use case is solved with the, or addressed with this technology. And I think we can improve all the good things we already have, for sure. But maybe in a way that it's not scattered over hundreds of GitHub repositories. Just one thought about this. So that's, I think, something we can really achieve in the next years. I think it will take some time, but it will make really a great contribution then to that huge task of transforming the society in a really digital one, with interoperable systems, and where we can really, where it's not a problem anymore to bring data from A to B.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Here's to hoping that just the fact that knowledge exists, that it will be used. So again, focus on the actionability of the communities of practice. So actually also making relevant links across the sectors and across, well, many lines. Harald and Roberto, a very quick final reflection from your side, and then we move on to our colleagues from the other companies.
Martin, thank you very much. I want to highlight one buzzword which we did not hear today yet: business models. Because we need to be clear. On the one hand, we are coming from research, but on the other hand, we are going to business, and we are all somehow opportunistic. We are taking the opportunities which are giving us into business, and we also need to reflect this on the technologies. Nobody will deploy anything which won't bring any payback period, return of investment, and so on. To be very, very clear, and what Joel, what you asked on where to locate the processing infrastructure, near edge, far edge, I think that's a lot on the costs and benefit of the items. And in IOF, we worked a lot on, let's say, also the different features of the technologies. We experienced a lot, we validated a lot. We really were able to identify the added value of those technologies, which is really a competitive advantage for those which are early in those technologies. And therefore, I must say, we are also handing over this knowledge now from IOF to the Smart Agri-Hubs project. Therefore, I changed my background, by the way. And in the Smart Agri-Hubs project, and what Stefan, what you also said, there's also a portal which is open to everybody, also for the community. We are also putting in there our material, also from IOF, that it can be open. There are also now open calls. If you want to propose innovation experiments, join us there. We have just opened one for 20,000 euro for preparing such initiatives. So very, let's say, a nice opportunity. However, I think we also need to keep into mind what all technology we love to research on. We must not forget the business, to be very clear and to have win-win strategies. Why are we doing open source? Because we want to do business, to be very clear on that.
Thank you, Harald. And maybe we can even extend that to say the triple baseline. Right, so the people, planet, profit. So of course you cannot forget either of those. You have to have the social dimension very strongly in the new rural communities projects, and you need the environmental.
All that goes hand in hand. I fully agree to that. I just wanted to make a very clear message.
but the message should be very clear. I think all agree here that this is not just an exercise for those who like tinkering. Roberto, a quick comment then, and I see Doris has raised her hand. So Roberto,
very quick. I'm very pleased to be here today, as I first said. I mean, glad to see that we have, let's say, people working in the hard technology, in developing the assets and the enablers that we are going to use, and people like Harald and me working on making business of these technologies, on creating value for the communities, and on putting them on value in our projects. Also, I want to thank very much our project officer, Olavi and Doris, because they have been really driving us to this community and helping us to pick up the pace. And really glad that they have shown us all this very big community around technologies, Internet of Things, and the development that is really driving Europe to new, let's say, era of let's say, value in rural communities, not only big cities, but there is future in rural communities, as long as we are able to put them in value and create value for them.
Very good. So hopefully this is a policy in the making, interactive policy, perhaps even. So this is, I think, a very good segue over to the more commercial side, or even more commercial side, I think. Thank you for making that link, Harald, also. And the link, Roberto, to the policy. So Doris, would you like to take the floor? And thank you, everyone. Maybe you can retreat now back to your closed screens. We're running a little bit behind time, but we have really cool presentations still coming up, so I hope you stay with us. So Doris, you have the floor.
Thank you, Martin. I'm very brief, and thank you for all the thoughts you shared. And I think I would like to come back to the comment made by Harald and also by others. I think the option of business models is quite important, and here we have actually two types of projects: the more agriculture oriented one, and for the agriculture one we have for digital technologies indeed already in some projects quite good business models, how they can work in practice. But we have now the opportunity that we have also the more rural let's say projects, and the business models can also be extended. We can also go beyond to think beyond agriculture cooperatives or agriculture communities, but also think, okay, have we synergies between other sectors in rural communities or public interests to make things business-wise work? So I think that is an element which could be considered in the future implementation. So that we have a system approach, not only as it regards the data infrastructure or data interoperability, but also a system approach, and that will vary across Europe because the conditions are varying as well. But that might be a thought to be picked up in future. And the other thing is really to show that it works business-wise and effective-wise as regards, for instance, sustainability. That are the key points we need to boost those technologies. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Doris. And I imagine that this is also part of the conversation of the long-term vision that is in development to make these different parts go together, and the policy actually recognizing the complexity here. Okay, so we will be efficient now and go to the what is here called use cases for local autonomy and edge computing. But we can be even more specific and say, okay, so we have some commercial offerings already there, and we have excellent colleagues joining from NGIoT, from John Deere, from Atos, and from Intrasoft. I think, you know, by just looking back, one thing we could improve is the gender balance. So I apologize for the extremely skewed example here. We try to pride ourselves in not having this situation. This unfortunately was not so easy for various reasons in this particular case. So Martijn, the floor is yours. You probably have been following the discussion here a little bit.
Yeah.
But now is your time. So there's a need to actually do business as supplier, but also as ecosystem players, right? So eager to hear your voice here. You have the floor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me know if I should stop.
Yes, please. So I'll share my screen and let me check, where is it? So we're not really like yet the industrial side. I have been asked, so I will present the NGIoT project, which is again a research project. There we are. Share. Hope you can see it. Can you see it? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Perfect. So the NGIoT, it's again a research project. So not to be on the negative side, but we are one of the research projects that is in the NGIoT call. So we were asked by the officer, Rolf Riemenschneider, to give a very short presentation about this project. And as we have an agricultural use case, I will say a very few words about it, as we're already quite short in time. So just quickly on me, my name is Martin Roker. I am responsible for the research projects at TT Tech Computer Technique in Vienna, Austria, and also for our daughter company, TT Control, which is very much focusing on agricultural, or the control of agricultural vehicles. So regarding the, let me put that, regarding the NGIoT project, so it stands for Intelligent Distributed Human Sense and Trustworthy IoT Environments. So it's, as mentioned, it's in the Next Generation Internet of Things call. We just started, so the project's now only half a year old, and we're still in the requirements phase. It's a 3-year project, and as mentioned, we have 3 use cases: so the agricultural one, we have a healthcare one, and a manufacturing. And yeah, it's led by Siemens, and you see the partners there. And let's make it like that. So the idea about the project is that we have all these different kind of applications for making system intelligence, agent-based and everything. And we want to deploy them on these, let's so-called edge devices or edge infrastructures. And that is in a closed loop, interacting with the environment to provide them with more intelligence and to make them even go towards autonomous systems. Nevertheless, within this project, we don't want to make them, we always call it semi-autonomous, so we don't want to make them full autonomy. We still want to keep somehow the human in the loop. Is that as soon as the system that should perform autonomous behavior is in a situation where it does not really know how to handle the situation, it will interact with the human via tactile internet, augmented reality, virtual reality, or directly interacting with the system, will cooperate with the system will learn from it based on the data it receives, based on the data it also gets from the environment, and then it will get to a higher level of autonomy and perform better in the future. So quickly on the agricultural use case. So just this is the high level overview, so that we call it the edge infrastructure, which is exactly as we heard in the beginning. Where will this be located? Will this be on the farm? Will this be on the technology provider side? This is currently what we are looking at. But here you will have the different the functionality, technologies that is available for the different devices. So in this case would be potentially a tractor, also drones or other kind of agricultural vehicles. And also where the farmer in principle at the end can make the mission for the tractor that it has to perform. So then it downloads it to the tractor, where we also see as an edge device. So we want to provide the tractor with more intelligence, with more capabilities, with learning functionalities, with interpretation functionality of the environment. So it will perform its task in the environment based on the information and the data it gathers. It will update its internal knowledge. So it has a model of the environment, has a model of the task it needs to perform, and also interacting with other entities, potentially drones, potentially also other vehicles in the field, or maybe even sensors that are located in the field, or other infrastructures. And then based on this information, it will update its internal knowledge. Again, if there is a situation which it cannot handle, even with the interaction of the other devices, it will interact with the human operator. And in our situation, the goal is either the human operator takes control directly of the vehicle, so that it can do a remote operation of the vehicle. So the operator could be even the farmer, which is sitting in his office, or maybe there's even that you have like this farming as a service, that companies that lend out these vehicles, these farming vehicles, and they provide this service to the farmer, and that they say, okay, we have this solution and we perform your tasks So, and then based on the interaction with the human operator, the tractor can then overcome the unknown situation. And again, it learns from this information. It uses the newly collected data, and then in the future, it should be able to overcome these situations. So as mentioned, we want to make, in principle, the tractor, the vehicles, we want to see, or we see them as an on-edge device. And then this would, in principle, a bit how it looks like. So we have this prototypical tractor in our project, which is an e-tractor. So we're also looking a bit into the Green Deal solution. So which is from one of our partners. And then we want to mount these, we call it edge device, into our tractor, and then it can connect all the different, like the cameras for collecting data. We need, of course, data storage devices, smart sensors, other kinds of processors so that it can also control the implement. So we also have to look at communication inside the vehicle. Isobus would probably also be an interesting topic to look at. And of course, the interaction, the visualization of the data, and also the interaction with either with a cloud, for example, or with the human operator, or with all the other entities inside the field. So this is a bit of the structure that we see for the edge architect or the edge infrastructure that we see inside our use case. And the idea is a bit also to have this then apply this to the other use cases, so the manufacturing and healthcare. So within the project, we want to come up with potential solutions that can be not only deployed in this area of agriculture, but also in the other domains. So reusing of technology, so not always reinventing the wheel for these specific areas. So that was quickly, in a nutshell, the approach that we have inside the use case. Then quickly about the project still, what I want to draw your attention to, that we are organizing next month so-called end user workshops, where we want to also involve potential end users inside the project and use their experience and their knowledge for developing the results inside the project. The end users could be, for example, it could be farmers. We are in close contact with some farmers, which they provide data, but it could also be like the big OEMs, technology providers, system integrators, but also like governmental entities or farmer associations. So everybody who could be interesting is welcome to participate in these end user workshops. So, for example, we heard today the AAF could be a very interesting also, where I see that they have a lot of technologies, or the other projects that are working in the area of agriculture. They are also more than welcome to participate in these user workshops. And finally, we have also open calls in these projects with a total budget of around 400K. It's in the second part of this year and next year also. So stay informed about this project. And yeah, here are the links to stay informed about the project, and feel free to register everything. And if there are any questions about the projects, feel free to contact me or register to the project and contact us.
Thanks a lot, Martijn, also for being so close to the topic. So now we're actually talking about what's happening on the edge and how to be practical about the next steps. Very, very, very helpful. And I think also for the further reporting here and putting actual next steps in place in the pipeline, if you will. I think this is extremely helpful. Thanks a lot.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thomas. I see you now. You opened your camera, and I think you can just take the screen when you want, if you want to show something, or I can show your name on a slide if you want.
I will share my screen, 1 second.
Very good. And please introduce yourself, but I think John Deere probably needs very little introduction in general, but perhaps it would be good just for the context of yourself and your perspective. So thanks for joining us and for taking the time here today. You have the floor.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm here to jump in. Originally, I think Peter Pickle was at least planning to, or was supposed to participate, but he's not available this week. So I think you all know John Deere. We are the global market leader for agricultural machinery, located in the US, but we also have a strong presence in Europe, a lot of factories in Spain, France, the Netherlands, Germany, etc. So we are a truly global player. And with that, we're also participating in a lot of EU-funded projects. We are, I think, well aware of what's going on. We are a member of AIoTI. We are participating in Demeter through IEF. We are participating in Atlas, etc. So from that perspective, all what I have heard so far, I think is well in line with what we are doing or what we are proposing. And I'm here at the European Technology Center that you see on the picture in Kaiserslautern, Germany. And I'm responsible a lot around public funding, working with universities, etc. And yeah, I think I'm more involved at the moment in Agri-Food, which is another big European initiative, but nevertheless, I'm also aware of what's going on in the other areas. So just a few slides around our strategy. And I think just to put it in the context, I think we all know that we need to ensure food security and that we have a problem with climate change. Agriculture is one of the biggest emittents of greenhouse gases. On the other hand, we are suffering also from that. And so we have some guiding principles. One is in the future, we need to produce more with less fuel, with less energy, with less inputs. And we need to become independent from, let's say, shortages in workforce, need to become independent from things like fuel. And therefore, I think we see technology needs in all these areas. And I will not talk about most of them. I just will try to focus a little bit on this smart IoT integration. So this slide is not new. It was not designed for that workshop. It shows that IoT is important for us. And how are we doing that? You see on the bottom, the tractor with the connectivity to an implement through Isobus, etc. We have a cloud system. We offer a lot of different solutions, apps for that. And when we look into that, all the machines automatically transfer data through the cloud. And then we can do a lot. And you see here just one example where you need that cloud computing and where you can bring together a lot of information sources. This is all around nutrient management. And I don't want to go into any detail. You just see you have a lot of information sources for soil data. You have satellite information, you see drone data, you see machines which have sensors, and you need to do all that to reach these goals in future, to produce more with less and in a very good quality. And for all of that, we need also partners. So we try to create an open ecosystem, our cloud system that we call the operations center, and where we also say, okay, it's only working if we can communicate with other clouds, and these clouds are other sensors like weather data or plant sensors, soil sensors, also crop growth models, etc. All that needs to get together, and part of that can be done on the machine. Part has to be done in the edge, and others are just in the internet. And what we see here is, I think we compare it a little bit with here this pyramid of automation that we know from manufacturing. So on top you see the enterprise resource planning, and that would become a farm resource planning, or the manufacturing execution system, which would be an agricultural execution system. So the top would be our farm management system, and that would clearly be in the cloud or in the edge cloud, and we would connect it also to external sensors around the cloud, like weather data. And on the shop floor level in a factory, that would be our farming operations in the field, where we would have also sensors, online sensors on our machines, and we would create something like a closed loop system and would then automatically adjust the machines. And finally, also the driver will be replaced and we will see more autonomous robots. And all that is going on. There are activities in all areas. And so at the end of the day, it's what we call it an adaptive agricultural production system. And for the sake of time, I will not go into any details. What is important here is we need good connectivity. So 5G is definitely important, not for all apps, but for some of the apps definitely where we need high speed and low latency. So this is more or less mandatory. And when we go back to that automation pyramid, I think on the farm level, we have a vertical integration here, and that is important. We also have the horizontal integration between different cloud systems. But this would be just our agricultural production system, our farm production system. And if we want to then put that in the wider context, then we know that we need to have this one integrated in the complete food value chain. So our adaptive agricultural production system would become part of really the complete food value chain, and we would need then things like blockchains, etc., to make that happen, to make it really traceable, etc., to build trust, all what we heard before. And so that is our clear picture that we are heading towards. And so we say agriculture 4.0 is IT-based, vertical and horizontal integration of farming. And embedding, that's the vision, optimal treatment of up to each single plant and animal as an individual. And all that is not new, and I have here just a slide from Peter Pickle, where he's always quoting the grandfather of agricultural engineering, Albrecht Herr, and that quote is 220 years old, where he just is comparing agriculture with manufacturing, and he said the full benefits we only will get if we treat agriculture with like manufacturing, and using IoT now gives us for the first time really the opportunity to come closer to that picture. So thank you for your attention. That was just my short presentation.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for the overview. So many connection points, obviously, to what is going on, but it's also good to see that you engage with the ecosystems and the networks that are discussing here now, so that it really becomes a let's say vibrant interaction, but also with scale. And we heard before, so the hyperscalers are obviously a part in this, in the edge cloud IoT continuum. And well, John Deere is a pretty central hyperscaler, if you want, in that space. So thank you for being here. From one to the other, I see you, Nuria, from Atos. Of course, so we heard in the morning from Albert Seubers and what Atos is doing in general on the continuum, if you will. But in this case, it would be great to hear your perspectives also here. Well, there's the communities part, and of course you're part of some of the projects. I don't know if you will mention this, but just to ensure that there are links both to the project side and to the business side, and as reflected just now, also engaging in the ecosystem building and evolution. So thanks for being with us in these troubling times.
Thank you very much, Martin. I will share my presentation. Let's see if this works. You tell me when you see it. Can you see it now? Okay, there we go. So thank you very much, Martin, for inviting me to be here. My name is Nuria Velama. I'm European Programs Manager at Atos. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of the Big Data Value Association, which is also an important player here since we are talking so much about data. I'm also involved in 2 of the projects that have been mentioned here. One of them is Demeter, and the other one is OpenDI, the coordination and support action, supporting projects in different clusters for digital transformation. And well, I know Martin since many years ago, since I was working with him also in the smart city domain, and I'm quite used to the topic of MIMs, minimal interoperability mechanisms. So my presentation will also tackle that point. And I have tried to prepare this from the point of view of supplier, in this case Atos, with our views on the agri-food sector. And I have tried also to create some pointers to both the innovation part, as you have mentioned, Martin, but also the business part. And it will be difficult because many of my colleagues have mentioned many things so far. So I've realized that many of my slides repeat some of them, but not all. So I will try to focus on the ones that are somehow a bit new, or where I will provide a different point of view. I like to start my presentations now with this slide, just not to present the whole Atos, but I think that is quite interesting the way we see now how we are using our technologies. You know that in Atos, we are working very much on artificial intelligence, in edge computing, Internet of Things, cloud, cybersecurity, or big data and analytics, among many other technologies. But I like the way we shape everything. So basically, we are using all these technologies in order to shape the future of the information space with our clients. And that is quite interesting because that puts in a very relevant place where data relies. So data will be so important that basically we consider that our customers, wherever the sector it is, will really have to think about their data strategy and shape their information space, because that will be crucial for their activities. And our technologies somehow are helping them to do this. So many of my colleagues have already mentioned many of these aspects that are changing the agriculture domain. I will not focus on all of them. You have also mentioned growing population. We need to increase the food production. I think there are some other topics that have not been mentioned so much that are also quite important to understand the role of all these technologies. And one of them, for example, is climate change. They need also to deal with the changing conditions now for production. Also, that we have different kind of customers. So finally, the production of food or other products reach a customer, and these customers are every time more well-informed, and they are also putting requirements, so they don't take everything that arrives to them. They really want products that are sustainable, where they can really check the traceability, the conditions in which they have been grown. So that means that more data is needed in order to provide a more customized service, or maybe products with additional value. There are also some organizational aspects that need to be considered. One of them is globalization, for sure, integrated value chain, and we have seen these days this vessel that was in the Suez Canal and was stopping all the vessels to go from one place to another in the canal. That has a huge impact on business, and of course you really need to take consideration of all these aspects when you are looking at the complete value chain. And one important that is also quite relevant is also servicitation, the fact that many products are not offered anymore as products, or not exactly as products, but also they are offered as a set of services. And this is something that we have seen in different industries in the last years, but is happening everywhere, also in the agri-food domain. On the other hand, of course, technologies are evolving a lot, and what we could do in the past has nothing to do with what we can do now. And there are different farm management software and IoT systems, agri-robotics. So basically, technologies now are having different prices and also have more capabilities. And I think that this is changing very much what we can do and the way we can do things. This slide is a bit more funnier, and it shows many figures that are interesting because they show predictions for 2050. But basically, the most important message here is that we are not only talking about increasing the production, which is obviously very, very important, or reducing costs, but also that we are doing that in a very constrained environment, which is the one of having every time less natural resources. So they need to be sustainable, and they need to comply with some requirements that so far were not on top of the table. So people could do somehow whatever they wanted in order to increase their parameters, but now we really need to take into consideration that we cannot do things like if there were more planets. So basically resources are limited, and this create additional constraints to what we have to do. And here technologies can help quite a lot. So it's not technology per se, but it's because technologies can really enable many things and can allow us to tackle many of these emerging challenges. One aspect that is also quite important, some of my colleagues have mentioned this, is the ecosystem. But we tend to think just about the farmer and maybe some technology providers, platform providers, but of course there are many additional actors that need to be considered. And what it is important is that finally all the technologies should create a quite open and fair ecosystem where the different people have opportunities. I think some of the colleagues mentioned that in the previous panel, but you know, it's not only the traditional actors we have in mind, there are some others that can disrupt the market. And here you can see, for example, regulators, NGOs, insurance companies, banks. I think that innovation in one of these ecosystems or players or stakeholders can really create or trigger additional innovations in the overall value chain. So I think it's quite important that we look at this in a very holistic way, considering that technologies on one side can also create many potential changes and trigger additional requirements in other parts of the chain. And as mentioned also by Harald, maybe it's obvious, but it's essential still that we talk about that, economics. Finally, we don't want technologies that are very expensive and no one wants to pay for them. So I think it's very important to consider this value creation, and there I have two parameters, the willingness to pay and the resource cost. And of course, the value creation is the difference between both of them. And if you have resource costs that are higher than the willingness to pay, of course, there's no business to do there. So I think it's very important to consider all these dynamics. But new technologies, I think, that are helping us to ensure that resource costs can be lower, and then we really need to make an effort in creating interesting business models for different stakeholders, and also interesting business cases that put in value data and that show basically what the return on investment can be, either from an economic point of view, or as mentioned before, from a more societal point of view, because there are motivations for all of them. I think that also Mariana in the very beginning mentioned that many technologies are already out there. The reality is that many technologies are out there. So here what I bring is not only what we have in terms of research, but more like the offering of Atos from an industrial point of view. What you see below is basically the Codex platform, which is the data analytics offering that we have in Atos, customized for the Agri-Food sector. And on the top side of my slide, you see basically the ecosystem we work with, because we are not working alone. Basically, we are already offering algorithmic platforms with mainly with Siemens. We work on exascale systems, maybe with SEA. And then we are also working with a quite interesting ecosystem of partners for the robotics and cognitive part. And all these are products and solutions that we are already selling to our customers. So this is not research. This is something we have in the market. What it doesn't exist, and maybe where we need to do more work, because I'm not saying that all the technologies have been developed, is that there are interesting solutions that can already be in place and are in place in the context of some customers with very concrete operational requirements and needs. And for example, Atos works quite a lot with companies. So this doesn't offer maybe an alternative for small players, for small farmers that may need more open source solutions, or that could not pay the cost of a solution like the ones that I'm mentioning here. So here is where interoperability means a lot, because of course we need platforms to talk to each other, but we also need solutions that are not locked in, where different players can choose different aspects, and also modular solutions that allow you to take advantage of things that you need, but maybe you don't need to buy the full solution, let's say like that. An aspect that has not been mentioned today so much, despite the fact that we are talking about edge, is the computing resources. And of course, data is one of the aspects where I will focus my presentation, but the reality is that in order to get value out of data, we need to do data analytics, we need to do data processing, and for that you really need machines in the end. And I think that still the cloud will be with us for quite a lot of time. But what I see more is that we really need to take into consideration a more combined approach. And depending on the solution and the context, you may need to combine different resources, different computing resources. And I would like to show here basically the evolution of computing resources and what was possible to do in previous years and what it is possible to do now. And I think machines have evolved a lot, and what you can do with them is really quite amazing. In Atos, we are investing a lot also in computing resources. You know that we are also a cloud provider, but you should not underestimate also the need for some applications to use high performance computing. And for this, we have the full Volkswagen series. And here we are talking very much about edge computing. So in Atos, we have also been working on edge computing, and we have already hardware and software for this, as well as I think that we are the only European company with an Atos quantum, with a quantum machine that is already commercial. So I think that this shows that we are investing as a European player very much also on having the full range of computing resources, which is something very important if you really want to extract value out of data. And not only in the cases where you have big data or massive amounts of data, that could be the case, for example, of meteorological predictions, where you may need HPC, or some other cases, as you were mentioning, maybe you don't need that and you can really manage with cloud or with a combination of edge and cloud. This is not suited just for Agri-Food, but I wanted to mention that because it really fits with the topic of the workshop. Again, is basically what we are already offering from a commercial point of view in terms of edge. And I saw just preparing this presentation that Gartner has named Atos as an AI tech innovator for 2020. So I think it's quite interesting to see that we are well positioned on that. And I hear some noise there. Okay. And here, basically, you see what we are already offering, which means quite a lot of things. So, for example, we have this Bullsequana Edge server that already provides AI inference and real-time analytics at the edge while keeping safe data and a secure environment for that. We also have the AI vision made by this Codex suite that I mentioned before, which is a GDPR-compliant computer vision solution. And there you see basically the full stack of solutions we have to work on the edge. Not all. They can be applied to agri-food, even though some of them are maybe more suited to industrial environments. But as my previous colleague from John Deere mentioned before, many of the aspects that we've been applying to the industrial domain can now be applied to agri-food perfectly well. It really depends on the business case. But this shows basically that also looking at the edge, a lot of things have already developed, and this technology is in the market. It's not coming from a research project. It's something that already works. But as mentioned, this doesn't mean that we have to stop here. We need solutions that are open, that are interoperable, and we need to show a wide range of solutions that allow other players also to get involved in the domain. And I would like to say here that maybe the weakest part of the chain is the weakest part of the ecosystem. So it's like with the vaccination now with COVID. If you don't vaccinate the whole population, basically there will still be a risk. So I think that in digital transformation, the purpose of companies like ours is also that all companies somehow go through the path of digital transformation, because that will make the ecosystem more powerful. So we don't want just few players, the big ones, to do it, but we really need all of them to be somehow at some stage so that operations with data can happen. So it's very important that we have solutions for everyone. And still a lot of work is needed, as I mentioned, because I'm working since many years ago, mainly in the area of data. I think it's interesting also to make some points or where we need to work more, looking a bit at the future and your roadmap. And here I would like to mention high quality data, because not everything is useful. And so we need to make data available, but also high quality data available. I think that in this respect, the focus and the pressure on the Commission to work on these secure and trusted data spaces is quite essential in order to make data available for people. But I think that we have to work also on more data sharing incentives and relevant business cases. People want trusted environments, but I think that still we don't have so many business cases that show the return on investment, basically, if some of the players share the data. And this needs to be worked further, because of course there are many examples that are good, but maybe they are not so well communicated. And I think that projects can make a very good action here. Some aspects that are very important and where still a lot of work has to happen, and some of my colleagues mentioned that, is the integration of information from different sources, following FAIR principles. And then in the beginning, we also had a presentation on FAIR principles, so I don't need to stop there very much. But I really checked the work programs, and in Horizon Europe and Digital Europe program, in both of them, of course, they mentioned the agricultural data space, and they mentioned a lot of typologies of data that the Commission and basically industry would like to see there. And it's not only closed data, where we maybe put more challenges and requirements in terms of security, safety, privacy, GDPR, whatever. It's also about open data. So basically, these data spaces should also provide a solution for data that is already available, but maybe doesn't comply with these FAIR principles. So a lot of work has to be done there, and also important maybe not to reinvent the wheel, because some work has been done, but still a lot is needed here. And then for interoperability, I think that the idea of minimum interoperability mechanisms is very good. It was applied to smart cities. Here you are talking about that. I think we are still far from having a clear view on what means be in agriculture, but I think it's good that we work towards that approach. And my colleagues already mentioned a lot of the work that is being done on data models, semantic interoperability, but it's just one part the game. I think that many other things need to be put on the table. Standards will play a major role, but we've seen today also that standards is not only the IoT part where many of us are used to work, or the data part, but also a lot of work has to do with standards that already exist in machinery, but also in things like the space domain. I think that a lot of work has been done there. Here we talk more about the projects from IoT, from data, but you know that in the Copernicus area and the space area, a lot of projects are also working with agriculture. And then of course, we mention other standards. And I think it's important that we don't forget that. And we should not underestimate also the need for cross-sectorial synergies. Still is very good to work on this kind of agriculture data space, but I'm sure that a lot of value will come from the integration and the access to data that also come from different domains. And you can imagine, for example, dietary data, so that has to do with health, or things related to emergency systems and disaster management that could have a high impact on farmers. Also logistics, and some of this data may come from other data spaces. So, and one example of that could be also the Green Deal data space. So I think it's also interesting to start from the very beginning with some baseline that allows the different data spaces to work on the same ground, so that afterwards we don't come up with something that will never be able to interoperate. And here, of course, the aspects of data governance and data sovereignty are very important. And for this, we are working very much with the International Data Spaces Association. These are the topics where we are currently working in Atos. And just for your recall, in case you want to take them into consideration also for the roadmap, at least is what we think that still a lot of work is needed. And maybe just finishing my presentation, a couple of aspects. One of them is the Gaia X that has been mentioned before. Atos is a founding member of Gaia X. We are working quite a lot on that. I think that it brings in a very nice way the two parts, the computing part, because of course the infrastructure will be needed in order to extract value from the data, but also the data spaces in order to make the data available. And I think that it will play a major role basically in ensuring that there is interoperability and that we all work on standards in a collaboration way somehow, because that will be the only way to make sure that somehow the data economy will really happen in the different sectors. But again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and maybe it's also good to look at different business models and the way data platforms have been working in other areas. And you know that basically for the Copernicus data, the Commission put money in order to fund different platforms they call DIAS, the Copernicus Data and Information Access Services. And I think it's a very nice model because the Commission has put money in order to create these data platforms, but then industrial players have to operate the platforms and have to create their business model and sustainability model on top of these data platforms. Atos is operating one of them together with other partners, the one called Mundi Web Services, and basically we provide added value services on top of geospatial data coming not only from Copernicus, but also from sensors and different data sources. And I think it is very nice because basically it offers many for free services for any kind of company, and you don't need to do your analytics. Basically, this is something that can be done by the platform and can be offered for free in some conditions. But then there are also some other additional services where you really need to pay for them. So I think it's a very nice schema of a partnership between private companies and the European Commission, where still public money is needed to set up an infrastructure that is useful for everyone, so providing economic and societal benefits for everyone. But then industrial players have also to invest, and at the same time they can also run different business models in order to make sure that the overall ecosystem is sustainable. So I think this is just one example, but it's also very important in this context because basically some data platforms are already operating with space-related data, geospatial data, which is a part that we need to take into consideration for the agriculture sector. And with this slide, I would like to finish my presentation. You have mentioned how important it is that we all collaborate. I think that I know many of you, and I'm collaborating with many of you. But looking at how many challenges we will have in order to set up these agriculture data spaces, I submitted a proposal for a workshop where I would like to tackle the building blocks aspect that also was mentioned before, understanding the experience with embryonic data spaces in agriculture, knowing what is already available from a technology point of view, but also looking at aspects like data monetization and all this storyline and all these different phases of building a real data space for agriculture will be tackled in a workshop that I hope will be selected. I will inform you about that, and that should happen in the context of the Data Week in May. So I really offer this context for everyone that wants to contribute, and I hope to count on many of you in that workshop. And I think that with this, I finish my presentation, Martin, and I'm really happy to contribute to the discussion or to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Nuria, for this extremely rich overview. I think it's so important that we see these connection points, because here there's scale, there is sectors, there is territories, and so on. So thank you, extremely helpful also going forward. So thank you for that, and sorry for the concise feedback, because I think in the interest of time we need to go on to Thanasis, this is the last presentation of the day. I hope you will stay with us. Everything will, of course, be captured and shared and reported on, as you know. So, Thanasis, from your side, how does it look? I mean, you have had a quite comprehensive fly-in to your intervention here. So please present yourself and what you take to the floor.
Thank you for inviting me, and you will all be happy to know that I can speak very quickly, and I have deleted 2 of my slides. Just to show you where we come from as Intrasoft. We are leading IT operations, just a few slides for that, so not more. IT solutions operator, we have been a key part player with the EU institutions for many years. We have also we do also work in innovation. We build also in other business cases, like customs taxations, etc. Agri-Food is not there. Bear with me for a little bit. I will get to that. We are all over the Europe mostly, and with offices also in business around the globe. Regarding our research division, we are in many projects. So we, as either technical contributor or as coordinator, we always look for pre-commercialization. We have taken the role of innovation leader within our group of companies. We have been involved in the strategic positioning in a group of our companies in Agri-Food as well, right? But also in other areas. Right? And we have been involved also in some productization activities and spin-off commercial kind of exploitations, spin-offs, etc. Right? Very quickly on that. These are the running and or recently closed Horizon projects. We have a number of activities across the areas, so there is no point to going over them. I will just point out these ones, which are the Agri-Food, right? Again, we will not go into each of them. Each project has its own point of view and its own contributions. For example, the WO project, which I had the honor of coordinating, was looking at big data operations, where the Demeter, what Kevin mentioned, presented earlier, is looking at more at interoperability in IoT, right? We also have another of IoT projects on the right-hand side. So I will just continue where Kevin stopped with the Demeter work, right? So we had all this, the space where the stakeholders talk with each other, the space where the marketplace that we have, right? The hub, and in Demeter project, right? And we have the integration space over here for the development and deployment of operations, right? So it has a brokerage service environment. We have what we call the Demeter Enabler entities, right? As also mentioned by Kevin. So we have these things that you put an adapter and an enabler, adding more functionalities, but also interoperability possibilities. So to be able to talk with AIM and to talk with each other, the brokerage service environment is the orchestrator and access control to all of this, right? So any application will look like that. We will have this, right? And just very quickly, so we can see our deployment currently on the left-hand side is, let's say, can be considered a cloud deployment, where we have the stakeholder space, the hub, and the reference implementation of the brokerage server with some reference entities, right? But pilots are expected to deploy also their own environments and their own entities, right? Okay, and sometimes they can also just deploy their own entities, talking with brokerage server environment. So this environment is just very scalable with a lot of functionalities, okay, microservices based, okay, where you can discover, provision and register services. You can talk with each other using the REST APIs, of course, but also with scalable publish subscribe patterns, think Kafka or MQTT, etc. It's not just, of course, data sharing, it's more about collaboration of the services, right? There can be many of them operated by different operators. They can be deployed anywhere. Okay, some in the pilot infrastructure, edge infrastructure, they are very lightweight. And they can if access control is provided, they can use entities being deployed elsewhere. So not only in your own island, but elsewhere, right? So it's a way to, to compromise between providing concrete implementations, but also applying, giving the flexibility to accommodate the different business needs, different models, as Harald, Nuria mentioned also. And beyond what we're doing, future work, I would think that this kind of thing can be appended with transparency, with blockchain supported, right, as transparency. And this might be needed in order to support the whole supply chain. So we are thinking of extending this, provided maybe a publish subscribe mechanism supporting multiple data for the whole supply chain. Right? I have deleted my other data. I think this is the only point you should be taking from my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for being with me for so long. I hope
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanasis, that's
Mm.
very kind of you. And please, when you submit the slides, you can add the extra content. I think that would be very appreciated by the colleagues, because we will share them anyway. Okay. I will just jump, if you can unshare your screen so that I can share my screen. So it's good to see we are now approaching the level of implementation clearly. That's encouraging.
Sorry, I cannot unshare my screen.
Okay, I can.
Okay, I found it.
No, so I mean, with the voices we heard here from the supply side focusing on the actual deployment, I think we can be quite encouraged. I think also for the outlook, which is to the sides, and actually to seeing how these edge nodes or the device gateway platforms are shaping up. I mean, you can go to Atos and buy one. You can go to John Deere and buy one, well, towards the agri side, and you can see the integrators are really there. So it's encouraging to see. This is actually the end of the road, as it were, for today. There are some visions and statements on the website. Feel free to go and check it out. You've heard from Dawood, but the others as well. I think we've had plenty of discussion throughout the day. So just to make one point before I give the floor to you, Doris, if you want, and you, Joel, to wrap up today. So this was the first day and the two first of a series of 6 thematic workshops. There will be 2 more on the 27th of April, manufacturing and mobility with a focus on automotive, and then on the 18th of May on energy, and then health and care. So please come back, and in the chat you can see the links for registration in a moment, I'm sure, and you will get them also by email. So any closing remarks? I think we can just safely say Francisco, Adrienne, Federico will take the results, if we can call them that, from the workshop here, and bring them forward into the white paper and into the roadmap that we will deliver back to the conversation. But as you heard, many other things and dialogue pieces are going on alongside with the publishing of the work programs. So the floor is yours. Should you want to comment, or maybe Doris, if you want, but Joel, to close off the session, I give you the opportunity.
Okay, I can.
Yes, please. Thank you, Joel, and thanks for staying with us, even though we were quite long.
No, I want to first to give you many thanks to all the interventions, and also to the project NGIoT for the organization of the workshop. My takeaway from this session is this workshop was useful to bring the community together. When I say the community, is not only the supplier of technology like the one we had in the last session, but also the users, and also the multi-perspective approach. In fact, it's important that, you know, the community has to be seen with very different perspectives, and we were able to get basically all these participants involved in this workshop. So for me, the agri-food sector has to innovate, considering the challenges that they are facing now. So investing in digital would certainly be an enabler to achieve these challenges, in fact. In particular, in making the digital transformation, addressing the environmental issues, the climate issues, all of this, you know, without the digital technology, digital transformation as an enabler, it would be certainly very difficult to achieve. So in this context, in fact, this workshop was very useful. So that's it for me. Thanks a lot. And basically, I wish you a nice end of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And of course, we will serve a cold beer and a glass of wine in the next room. Unfortunately, you have to bring it yourself. So everyone, thank you for coming. Thanks for the presenters for taking the time. Thanks for the audience to staying on. I think it's quite impressive that here during Easter we have such a good showing. That's very nice. And thanks for the team for setting all this up and for the support. It's a pleasure to be working with you all. I look forward to the coming weeks and months and years. Thanks a lot and take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Martin. Bye-bye.
Bye.